Good afternoon, and thank you for attending this Budget Council meeting in the City Hall Council Chamber. Please note that the meeting is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel, and I welcome members of the press and public who may be viewing this meeting remotely. As this is a Budget Council, a recorded vote will be taken on the budget proposals and on any amendments proposed. We now move into the formal business of the meeting. Can we take the notice convening the meeting as read? Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Madam Mayor, we have apologies from Councillors Bernicle, Chapman, Laverick, McKeith, George Smith, H. Truman, D. Truman and Williams, and also from Alderman Farthing, Forbes and Tate.
Are there any further apologies?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Julia Putz is running late.
The next item is... sorry. Yeah.
Councillor Heron.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah. The next item is the minutes of the last ordinary meeting of the Council held on the 22nd of January 2025. Can we agree the minutes?
Madam Mayor? Sorry, it relates to the Rules of Procedure number 24.2.1 and amending Council Procedure Rules. And it's in relation to the change in the last full Council meeting to those procedure rules. But this rule says that any attempt to vary or revoke or add to these procedure rules will, when proposed and seconded, stand adjourned without discussion to the next ordinary meeting of the Council. So I just wondered if we could get some clarification on whether those changes were done constitutionally last time. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, through you, yes, the correct procedure was followed because it was in response to a recommendation from Cabinet. So yes, the change was made validly.
Members are reminded that dispensations have been granted to all those members who have applied for them in order to deal with matters relating to the budget and setting the council tax. The declarations of interest we have received prior to the meeting are displayed at the entrance of the chamber. If anyone has anything further to declare, can they indicate accordingly?
I don't know if this is relevant, but I work for ATG, the management company of Sunderland Empire.
Any other declarations of interest? Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to declare that I'm also a member of the Cooperative Party, and I think in one of the amendments it was to remove the membership from the Cooperative Council's Initiative Network.
We only have one announcement this afternoon, and I believe it is somebody's birthday within the chamber. And I've been asked to say a very special happy birthday to Councillor Haswell. Please, birthday. Happy birthday. I would like to thank those members who have given notice of their wish to speak. If any member who hasn't given prior notice wishes to speak at any point during the meeting, they should please raise their hand to indicate and speak when invited to do so. I now call upon the Leader to move the approval and adoption of the report of the Cabinet.
I so move, Madam Mayor.
Deputy Leader, do you second the report?
I second the report, Madam Mayor.
Leader, would you like to speak to the Cabinet report?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I'm pleased to formally move the revenue budget and capital programme for next year. As in previous years, we've worked hard to ensure this is a positive budget which allows us to continue with our ambitious social and economic regeneration plans for the city, whilst ensuring we continue to protect and support our residents most in need. Firstly, I would like to pay a tribute to my fellow members and our hard-working employees for making every effort in collaboration with our valued partners to support all residents and businesses by providing the best services possible. Madam Mayor, as part of the budget setting process, we continue to review our city plan annually, with our latest plan covering 2025 to 2035, reconfirming our vision that Sunderland will be a connected international city with opportunities for all. The regular review of the city plan enables us to ensure that in a fast-moving environment, we are clear about the considerable progress being made and that our efforts and resources remain focused on delivering further improvements and opportunities for everyone in our city. Year after year, key aspects of the plan are very much taking shape, with major developments being delivered by the Council alongside partners across all sectors, and it's with the continuation of this in mind, against the backdrop of global, national, regional and local conditions, challenges and opportunities, that I move the revenue and capital budget proposals this afternoon. Madam Mayor, the final local government finance settlement for 25-26 was published on the 3rd of February. National funding allocations are largely unchanged from those detailed at the provisional settlement stage, and the distribution of the additional grant funding to the Council is in line with the provisional settlement. However, core spending power information was revised with the final settlement to give a national average increase of 6.8%, with Sunderland receiving a higher increase of 9.37%. Madam Mayor, for 15 years, successive Labour leaders from Paul Watson to Harry Truman to Graham Miller have stood here aghast at the bewildering and deeply unfair spending decisions of the previous Conservative and Liberal Democrat government. But now, finally, albeit with unenviable economic constraints inherited in July, we see a settlement for local government and for this Council finally going in the right direction. Madam Mayor, what a relief finally to see common sense and decency applied by the Labour government, with significant additional resources directed to both adults and children's social care, protecting services for our most vulnerable as inflation, provider costs and demand pressures continue to rise. The Council has also seen a significant increase in demand by those that are homeless or at risk of homelessness, and this increased demand continues to place financial pressure on temporary and supported accommodation budgets. Inflationary pressures in the national economy continue to drive up costs of goods and services, impacting on all areas of our service delivery. This, coupled with the cost and demand pressures, is driving the vast majority of the £48.8 million spending pressures and commitments the Council is needing to manage in 25-26. The Council has continued its approach to addressing the remaining budget gap by identifying savings which seek to minimise the impact on frontline services wherever possible, or thinking differently about how we deliver. However, the Council is still being impacted by the lagging impact of Tory and Lib Dem austerity. That means 2025-2026, the budget includes £9.974 million of proposed savings. And so, to achieve a balanced budget position, we are proposing to use £9 million of our prudently accrued medium-term planning reserves next year to support the financial position. And then, once again, Madam Mayor, we have no choice than other to raise council tax. The compound impact of the previous Conservative and Lib Dem government's significant and disproportionate funding reductions over the previous 14 years, combined with inflationary and social care pressures, means we are still once again faced with very difficult short-term decisions, despite the increase in funding provided by the Labour government this year. Madam Mayor, the local government finance settlement published by government permitted a combined council tax rise of 4.99%. Raising council tax remains one of the most difficult decisions for all councils. However, if we do not raise it, we will need to cut services and reduce our investment in the key priority areas. That would mean cuts in services to the most vulnerable in our communities and to the services which residents tell us are a high priority. The Labour government is committed to reforming local government funding, directing resources to those areas with the greatest need and demand and that are at least able to raise income locally. As I've already outlined, Madam Mayor, the local government finance settlement demonstrated this commitment by allocating more resources to councils like us. But even with this additional funding, in order to prevent cuts to frontline services, enable essential investment in key priorities and minimise the use of reserves, an increase in council tax is unfortunately necessary. Madam Mayor, this Labour-led council has always strived to keep council tax as low as possible, and in that vein, we are proposing an increase in core council tax this year of 2.49%, which is below the maximum level permitted, and I understand is the lowest increase in core council tax of any council in the North East. Colleagues will also note the budget proposals include an adult social care precept to ensure we are able to continue to provide the necessary high level of care and support to the most vulnerable adults in our city. Without this ring-fenced funding, we would be forced to look at a reduction in service to those who need us most, something I hope we can all agree across the chamber would be the wrong thing to do. However, Madam Mayor, I would like to highlight my call to government, shared by other leaders across the country, that urgent reform to the funding of adult social care is needed. The crisis in social care is significant for those affected, and it's piling up huge pressures on the NHS. Our ageing society means if we do nothing, the costs of care will double in the next 2 decades. There is a lot of blame to go around on all sides for the state of failure we find ourselves in today, but I welcome this Labour government's desire to want to finally break this cycle, including their invitation to opposition parties to work together to build a national consensus on the way forward. The government announcement about an independent commission on social care to be led by Baroness Louise Casey, who has a strong track record of getting things done for Labour, Tory and Lib Dem governments, is the right person to build a cross-party consensus on a national care service. The first phase reports next year and will identify critical issues facing adult social care and set out recommendations for effective reform and improvement in the medium term, with the second phase reporting by 2028. I urge the government to reform the local funding of adult social care by abolishing the social care precept and covering the real cost of social care on an area needs basis. The social care precept is unfair, particularly on those councils with a low council tax base. A national care service needs to be that, a national care service, and not a national service funded in part by a local council tax precept. Madam Mayor, now moving back to our budget proposals, members will note that the proposed total increase is below the referendum limit set by the government, and therefore a referendum is not required. Taken together, the 2.49% increase in core council tax and the social care precept represents an increase of 99 pence per week for a Band A property. A Band A property make up the vast majority of properties within Sunderland. We will continue to support our residents through our local council tax support scheme, significantly protecting those with the lowest incomes from the rise through our support scheme that we approved at last council, and that will mean 9,500 of the lowest income people in our city will be taken out of paying council tax altogether. It is worth noting at this point, the news reported yesterday, Madam Mayor, that annual pay growth, excluding bonuses, was 5.9% from October to December, some encouraging news for workers who have seen their wage stagnate through the years of Tory and Lib Dem austerity. Despite the proposed increase, based on what we understand from our neighbouring authorities and their council tax plans, our Band D council tax will remain the lowest in the region. Madam Mayor, the medium-term plan is also presented this afternoon. As we know, the future outlook is brighter but remains uncertain. There are at this stage unfunded cost pressures and uncertainties on future inflationary costs and demand impacts on council services in future years. I would like to remind members that in December, before the provisional settlement, our projected 3-year deficit after 14 years of Tory and Lib Dem austerity stood at £76.5 million. In 7 months, and after one settlement from the Labour government, our 3-year medium-term deficit currently stands at £39 million, an improvement of £37.5 million. When the Labour government said they were elected to fix the foundation of our economy, they meant it, and this settlement is proof of the Labour government delivering in government its promises whilst in opposition. Looking forward, the government has confirmed plans for a full package of funding reforms of local government funding in 26-27, and that this will be the very welcome start of multi-year settlements, something we and the rest of the local government family have appealed and lobbied hard for many years, something that was repeatedly promised by the last Tory government but never delivered. The funding reforms are intended to fundamentally improve the way councils are funded, but will also have an emphasis on directing funding where it is most needed, based on an up-to-date assessment of need and local resources. And if this year's settlement is a starting point, that can only mean good news for councils like ours, and by extension, the residents we have the honour to serve. Work should and will, of course, continue, Madam Mayor, to identify a further suite of proposals to address the remaining budget gap into future years, and we will actively engage with the government through the funding reform process for a true, fair funding agreement for local government. Madam Mayor, as I mentioned earlier, the City Plan has also been reviewed and the revisions have been proposed to ensure it sets the right framework in terms of ambitions, commitments and activities, enabling continued progress by the Council and partners to achieving our 2035 vision for the City. With this in mind, Madam Mayor, particularly with a view to our proposed capital programme, we continue to be ambitious for the City and its residents, ensuring through sound financial planning that we both invest in the essential services we deliver day in, day out, and in the future of our city with a continued significant programme of transformation and regeneration. Madam Mayor, my Cabinet colleagues will each speak about the proposals for their portfolios shortly. They will highlight some key projects and features of our continued development of and investment in Riverside, Sunderland, the International Advanced Manufacturing Park, Hillthorne Park and others. And they will cover our investment in Sunderland becoming the UK's smartest city through the development and deployment of next-generation digital technologies for the benefit of all of our residents and businesses. Colleagues will also talk about our world-class events programme and cultural offer, and cover our investment in ensuring the city is clean, green, safe, welcoming and looking after and capitalising on its plentiful, stunning natural assets. With all this and more, Madam Mayor, setting strong foundations, our continuing bold ambition for the city, combined with an enviable track record of delivery and an increasingly positive global reputation and profile, mean that there is significant investor confidence in Sunderland. The private sector simply wants to do business here, where we can provide the best possible infrastructure, and that's vital to ensuring we keep on driving economic growth for the benefit of everyone across the city in relation to jobs, household income, skills, education, health and every aspect of living a happy, safe, fulfilling life here in Sunderland. And so, Madam Mayor, our budget proposals for the next year confirm that we will continue to invest in our city, we will continue to invest to protect the most vulnerable people in Sunderland, and we will continue to invest in services that our residents tell us are important to them, such as tackling antisocial behaviour and increasing community safety. Our priority now, Madam Mayor, is to ensure we connect our residents and communities to all of the opportunities these significant programmes of investment and regeneration present. Madam Mayor, Councillor Jones will shortly reflect on the events of last August and how we know how important it is in shaping our future plans and decisions to listen to and understand the aspirations, needs, priorities and concerns of all of our residents and communities. So we invest in next year, Madam Mayor, in building on our approach to resident engagement to really deepen our understanding of what is important to those living and working here in Sunderland. We will make sure we give residents opportunities to share meaningful feedback, and then we will in turn feed back to them on what we're doing as a result of what they have told us. We'll be making sure we hear from all of our communities, from Washington to Roker, from Houghton to Hendon and everywhere in between. Ultimately, Madam Mayor, by genuinely working together in this way, we can create a city for everyone to be proud of. I believe that these proposals represent the most appropriate balance, taking all factors into account, and will enable us to continue Sunderland Labour's strong track record of investing in our city and delivering the best services we possibly can for our residents. So with that, Madam Mayor, I commend the Council this afternoon both the revenue budget and the capital programme for 2025 and 2026. Thank you.
Before dealing with any amendments, the individual portfolios will be introduced by the portfolio holders. Deputy Leader of the Council in Health and Wellbeing and Safer Communities, Councillor Checker.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And as the Deputy Leader of the Council and portfolio holder for Health, Wellbeing and Safer Communities, I wholeheartedly endorse and second the budget proposals presented by the Leader. Madam Mayor, improving the health and life chances of children and adults, taking an all-population approach to public health, addressing homelessness and improving community safety are all within my portfolio's remit. Today's budget proposals allow for the investment the city needs to support and protect our most vulnerable residents and to enable and remove barriers to all of our residents accessing the opportunities being created through our comprehensive regeneration programmes. With this in mind, Madam Mayor, I have to commend my Cabinet colleagues, elected members and staff for their efforts over many months in producing the budget proposed here today and for ensuring that these proposals seek to minimise the impact on services as far as possible. I also want to pay tribute to the continued work of the Scrutiny Coordinating Committee, who have also played an important role in the production of these budget proposals. The revenue budget presented allows us to protect essential, much valued services to our residents, communities and businesses across the city. As members will appreciate, the economy is still recovering from a period of unprecedented inflationary pressures, and to continue to deliver the same level of services is in itself no small feat. Madam Mayor, before turning to the detail within my own portfolio budget, can we first consider the national context regarding the ongoing issues within adult social care and public health? As members will be aware, people are living longer, often with more complex needs, which is placing demand on pressures on all of our care services. In addition, the current inflation and national insurance changes on our providers provides an additional financial challenge which the Council must address. Our adult social care services have demonstrated their significant value throughout the COVID pandemic, the cost of living crisis and the increasing health inequalities our residents face. We have continued to deliver excellent service through our own care and support company, Sunderland Care and Support, and through external care providers. These are the care services that our most vulnerable residents depend upon. We play a critical role in joining up health and care services by supporting hospital discharges, as well as the focus on prevention and providing care and support to communities, to people in community settings. And we will do everything we can to make this system work, but a sustainable long-term funding solution must be a priority. Notwithstanding this, a significant additional resources have been needed to support the continued ongoing demand and complex needs of those residents who rely on our social care services. As outlined by the leader, additional funding has been prioritised for adult social care within the Council's proposed revenue budget. This will support investment in services, help meet the rising costs from demand, and seek to address the inflationary impact of services we secure from adult social care providers. To meet the needs of our residents across the city, the budget proposed to Council includes over £15 million of additional investment in our adult social care service. Madam Mayor, the budget proposals outlined today from my portfolio arise from work undertaken over many months to develop a service offer that meets assessed need in the most cost-effective way. Turning to public health, we welcome the real terms increase in the public health grant for 2025-2026 as announced on the 7th of February. I'm also pleased to say that we have secured significant national investment for drug and alcohol treatment and recovery services and quit smoking services, two areas which make a significant contribution to health inequalities in Sunderland. We will continue to work towards an environment which promotes good health and provides public health services which improve outcomes and reduce inequalities, supporting our residents' health and well-being. We are refreshing our Healthy City plan to ensure that our approach remains needs and evidence-based and community-focused. Like all local authorities, Sunderland is faced with severe financial challenges due to an increase in people who find themselves homeless or at risk of being homeless. We take our duty to accommodate those found to be homeless very seriously and want to ensure that we provide the crucial support which enables people experiencing homelessness to move forward into settled accommodation. We're therefore implementing a new model of support where all clients are accommodated and offered 24/7 support. This affords people stability to get over their time of crisis and to prepare for independent living with a reduced likelihood of becoming homeless again. And then in terms of our Safer Communities priorities, Madam Mayor, I'm really pleased to confirm that an additional £1 million is being invested next year in our partnership-based community safety function to ensure that we're better able to tackle antisocial behaviour and community safety concerns that all residents tell us that they have. It's incredibly important to residents' quality of life and access to opportunity, Madam Mayor, and to Sunderland's reputation as a fantastic place to visit, invest and study, that all parts of the city feel and are safe and secure. No one should feel afraid in their own homes and communities or any part of the city, living the life that they want to or doing things that they want to. And this additional investment next year signals our commitment to building on some existing impactful and successful initiatives and approaches to reducing crime, fear of crime and antisocial behaviour. With that, Madam Mayor, I feel that the revenue budget and capital programme proposals presented here today are balanced, represent value for money and will enable us to continue delivering our ambitious plans for the city, creating the widespread opportunities our residents deserve to fulfil their significant potential. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I would now like to invite the portfolio holder for Children's Services, Child Poverty and Skills, Councillor Butler.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to endorse the budget proposals presented by the Leader of the Council this evening. Within my portfolio's remit, our clear commitment is to ensure that children and young people in the city achieve the best possible outcomes and residents are provided with the best possible learning and skills opportunities. The Council's work alongside partners across all sectors to reduce child poverty is also a key priority within my portfolio. Madam Mayor, despite the continued national rise in demand for services for children, 24-25 was a year of continued progress for our children's services. Together for Children, our outstanding Ofsted-rated children's service continues to work closely with both Ofsted and the Department for Education and leads on regional and national projects and practice, which provides significant assurance that the Council continues to strive for excellence in the difference it makes for children and families. Using our own capital programme, we have continued to increase the number of our own children's homes, which means that more Sunderland children get to stay in Sunderland. This wise decision has given us some protection from the significant costs of external children's care, which profits from local authorities on a huge scale. Coupled with continued success in reducing the number of new cared for children, we can now start to see an improving budget position for the costs of this type of care. The strong foundation of early help services built over the last 6 years has given us an excellent platform from which to go live with our 5 family hubs located throughout the city. The hubs are complemented by an extensive social media presence and an online booking platform helping people to engage with their local hub and take advantage of the services and opportunities they provide. Once again, with the rollout of the hubs, Sunderland is setting the standard for services to children and families. Great things can only be delivered if we have a workforce which is invested in our children, families and in our city. I want to commend and thank the staff across all Together for Children services who help vulnerable children and families every single day. As a result of their dedication and professionalism, we continue to have a permanent and stable workforce which protects us from the additional costs of agency social work which are crippling to many other councils. Madam Mayor, turning to our schools' budgets, which are predominantly funded by the Dedicated Schools Grant, we are affected by the same issues in our special educational needs and disabilities provision as many other councils across the country. Education, health and social care plan provision has increased threefold over the last 5 years, and we have the highest rate of increase in plans for the under 5s population. We've continued to increase both the quantity and variety of local send places to ensure that the provision available for our children and young people is both appropriate and accessible, with the new provision developed across the city in the last year, including new specialist provision at Hudson Road and Mill Hill primary schools. Our Delivering Better Value programme, intended to alleviate the pressure in our high needs block funding, is underway, but the cost of home to school transport, which is increasing, falls to our revenue budget and remains a significant area of pressure. The Council has invested in carbon-reducing, independent creating initiatives for Send Transport, but as the number of children continues to increase, the challenge is significant. We continue to lobby government for a fairer and affordable solution for Send Transport. The Council continues to improve the conditions of its maintained school estate to ensure our children have access to safe and secure buildings and to ensure schools are able to deliver a high quality curriculum. This year we have made a clear commitment working closely with the North East Combined Authorities Child Poverty Reduction Unit to tackle child poverty in Sunderland. The unit was launched at the first North East Child Poverty Summit at the Beacon of Light in November, and as a strategy and action plan is developed at the regional level, we are working on the same specifically for Sunderland, building on a range of partnership-based actions and activities already being delivered. Work is currently underway to deliver auto-enrolment for all children eligible for free school meals and to maximise the amount of pupil premium funding available to all schools. Related to this, we have invested in a food partnership officer who leads on the development and implementation of a programme of work including the sustainable food agenda, health inequalities and the commercial determinants of health to ensure everyone has access and can afford to enjoy good food. Turning to learning and skills, Madam Mayor, which is a priority and for which provision is made in the budget, the Adult Skills Fund and Learning and Skills Service aims to support adult learners in gaining skills that lead to meaningful, sustained and relevant employment or enable them to progress to further learning that delivers such outcomes. Grant funding through the North East Combined Authority also plays a crucial role in providing additional funding to support the development and delivery of a curriculum which provides tailored learning programmes and qualifications, with participants gaining qualifications that enhance employability opportunities. The curriculum offer includes qualifications designed to meet key employment sector needs and attracts over 1,600 participants per annum. Within the last academic year, 176 participants have secured employment, with the majority in permanent positions. This stability is crucial for long-term career development and financial security. Some participants have found temporary roles and some are employed on a term-time basis, reflecting the flexibility and variety of opportunities available through the programme. Madam Mayor, with all of this in mind and with the commitment that we will continue to address the budget pressures in children's services with discipline by developing early support, targeted and specialist services that reduce the need for high-cost interventions, I wholeheartedly commend the budget proposals presented this evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'd now like to invite the portfolio holder for Communities, Culture and Tourism, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I fully endorse the budget proposals by the Leader of the Council. As the portfolio holder for Communities, Culture and Tourism, my portfolio has responsibility for supporting local communities to achieve their best outcomes, including fostering community cohesion and community wealth building. Madam Mayor, next year's budget proposals for the Communities, Culture and Tourism portfolio continue the work that has been undertaken before to strengthen the cultural, sporting and events offer available within our city. 2024 saw a world-class range of events being delivered across the city of Sunderland, including the Bruce Springsteen concert, the Big Swim Bike Run event, the Festival of Light and our Pride in Sunderland's celebration of the city's increasing diversity, all of which we will build on during 2025. Sunderland's global profile and reputation continues to grow, helped in no small part by the fact we are viewed as a creative and cultural hub. Only last month we saw Sunderland officially getting Music City status and becoming part of the worldwide Music Cities network. Being only the second city in the UK to achieve this status, we now sit along cities across the world, including Sydney, Berlin and Valencia. This is incredibly exciting, Madam Mayor, on a number of fronts, not least in terms of the opportunities it creates for all of our talented residents, both now and also in the future. which will be enhanced by the recently launched Sunderland Music Strategy and the Sunderland Year of Music. If music be the food of love, 2025 is going to be an amazing year. And on that note, I'd like to turn for a moment to be the part of my portfolio's remit to foster strong, resilient, cohesive and inclusive communities in line with our philosophy that no one and no place will be left behind. The social unrest seen in August 24 in our city and in many places throughout the country has reinforced the vital importance of listening to and working in partnership with all of our different communities to make connections and to support everybody to realise their aspirations and fulfil their potential. August's events were the result of the actions of a very small minority who do not represent this city in any way. What does represent our city is the overwhelming positive response by the community in the days immediately after and ever since. People from all backgrounds, faiths and walks of life, determined to build an even more welcoming, cohesive and inclusive city where diversity is celebrated and plentiful and opportunities can be easily accessed. In next year's budget, Madam Mayor, we are therefore investing in specialist engagement work in relation to cohesion issues in order to complement the comprehensive programme the leader outlined earlier. We are investing in the vital partnership approach needed on this agenda and in supporting the co-production and delivery of a new social cohesion strategy for Sunderland. As I said a moment ago, we also continue to maximise our cultural offer across the city. The museum and the Winter Gardens continues to welcome thousands of visitors from across the city and beyond, with visitor numbers increasing and work ongoing on proposals to redevelop the museum with support from the National Lottery Heritage Fund. Last month, we also saw the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport, Lisa Nandy, also commit significant funding for Sunderland Glassworks. We are investing in Arts Centre Washington, improving the visitor experience and working with the Heritage Sunderland Partnership, Sunderland, to expand its rich offer. And one of the glittering jewels in the crown, the Sunderland Empire, also continues to draw hundreds of thousands of visitors each year, bringing major West End shows to our city. In terms of broadening the cultural offer, the budget provides for capital investment of over £32.2 million over the next 4 years. A significant part of this investment is the exciting development of Culture House Sunderland. The scheme is now well underway and will be a fantastic addition to the city for both visitors and residents. This 21st century cultural venue here in the city centre will attract people with a broad-ranging activity programme throughout the course of the year. It will transform our library offer, bringing a whole new experience of libraries and local studies to Sunderland, and it will encourage and enable creative engagement across all our communities in a high-quality, family-friendly environment with world-class digital technology and creativity at its heart. We are also still committed to the regeneration of Washington F-Pit and Albany Park, which will undoubtedly promote and preserve an important part of our mining heritage. Madam Mayor, 2025 will see a new era of events in Sunderland. We will continue to develop and announce more new and exciting events as the year unfolds, providing activities, entertainment and fun for residents and visitors alike. This year, amongst the events we are already looking forward to are the opening ceremony and the first match of the Women's Rugby World Cup and the Bright Lights Youth Art Festival. We will also see Come and Play, a future fun youth event this February, Come and Plant, a community grown festival in May and September with a focus on sustainability, biodiversity and growth, and also Come and See, a summer event to explore our future city and homes. The support, development and enhancement of community events will again be a strong theme with the events programme moving forward. Dedicated event funding will be made available to area committees to match, with a view to igniting locally produced events by, with and for local people in all areas of the city. It was crucial in creating the new era of events in Sunderland that you adopted a new way of working to expand our reach and available resource. By collaborating with others, we engaged in co-production, joint marketing and event support through a new grant scheme administered by the events team, enabling new and existing events in the city to grow and to develop. And then in terms of tourism, Sunderland is set to launch its first ever tourism strategy in 2025, which will mark a fresh approach to growing our reputation as an exciting and welcoming destination. Rolling out in late spring, the strategy highlights just how important tourism is to Sunderland's economy, culture and identity. It's a source of pride, a job creator and a key driver of growth, with over 4,500 people already working in the sector. We will ensure Sunderland continues to develop its wide-ranging offer, something for everyone, with experiences and activities and venues across the city, ranging from music, heritage and arts to participation in sport and physical activity, and to world-class spectator events, genuinely creating opportunities for all in line with our city plan vision. Madam Mayor, as previously emphasised, the financial position for councils across the country remains extremely challenging as we continue to deal with the rot of the previous governments and 14 years of unfair local government settlements for cities like ours. However, we have already seen under this Labour government extra funding that will relieve some pressures that will benefit residents in many ways, including keeping council tax the lowest in the region and 9,500 households receiving 100% support. We continue to put a vibrant, inclusive and inspiring cultural and wellness offer at the heart of our plans to support the city's economic growth and regeneration ambitions. With that, Madam Mayor, I fully support and commend to Council the budget proposals for next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I would like to invite the portfolio holder for Corporate Services and Equalities, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, as the portfolio holder for Corporate Services and Equalities, I fully endorse the budget proposals presented by the Leader of the Council. My portfolio has responsibility for providing efficient and effective deployment of resources to sustain services in our communities. I also have responsibility to ensure that the Council's internal operations are integrated, enabling and effective, and have oversight of corporate planning and performance management activities and the development of the city plan. As the Leader has set out, budget planning has, once again, been challenging, but starting from the robust financial position that our Council has, we are able to present a budget which protects our residents, protects our services, and importantly, allows our ambitious city plan developments to continue. But let us be very clear, the compound impact of the previous government's significant and disproportionate funding reductions in previous years, combined with inflationary and social care pressures, means that we are once again faced with very difficult decisions. Whilst the finance settlement received from the new Labour government is starting to address previous government's years of austerity, local government remains underfunded. The health crisis is needing social care to increase capacity, and whilst inflation is falling, it continues to make vital services more costly for us to deliver. This is the legacy of 15 years of inadequate government funding of services for the most vulnerable in our society. The proposed increase in council tax is not a decision which has been taken lightly. Madam Mayor, the Labour government is committed to reforming local government funding, directing resources to those areas with greatest need and demand, and that are at least able to raise income locally. The local government finance settlement demonstrated this commitment by allocating funding to councils like us. Madam Mayor, against this backdrop, the revenue and capital proposals have importantly been through a rigorous process during months of development and consultation. And I would like to thank my Cabinet colleagues, members and officers who have worked hard to produce the budget today. I would like to particularly mention the officers because unlike us, they have 3 budgets to work on, not just one. Madam Mayor, I feel that the revenue budget and capital programme presented today recognises the financial challenges we, our residents, communities and businesses are facing, whilst also supporting the pursuits of our ambitions to drive our city forward as articulated in our city plan. Through my portfolio, I continue to provide corporate oversight of the Council's budget into the medium term. The budget proposals today set out the need to use £9 million of reserves to support balancing next year's budget. This must be a temporary measure, but one that we believe is needed to protect the most vulnerable during these challenging times and ensure we continue to deliver services. The medium-term financial plan presented today is a detailed risk assessment of cost pressures and funding assumptions. Inflation, as at December 2024, was at 2.5%, and inflationary pressures in the national economy continue to drive up the costs of goods and services and pay, impacting on all areas of our service delivery. Alongside the ongoing demand and cost pressures in the social care sector, this is causing the majority of the £48.8 million spending pressures and commitments the Council needs to manage going into 2025-26. Our own cautious and very prudent approach to forecasting and planning seeks to mitigate this uncertainty where possible, with our overall financial position demonstrating financial resilience in 2025-26 and beyond. But looking ahead, financial challenges still remain. We cannot become one of the councils around the country finding themselves in financial difficulties. The challenge to bridge the medium-term funding gap is significant and has reduced, but it is one we must move to develop a plan for through identifying further cost savings or securing additional funding. Madam Mayor, as we look ahead, the Government has confirmed plans for a full package of funding reforms for local government funding in 2026-27, and that this will be the start of a multi-year settlement. The funding reforms are intended to fundamentally improve the way councils are funded, but will also have an emphasis on directing funding to where it is most needed, based on an up-to-date assessment of need and local resources. We welcome this long-awaited reform of local government funding, and we need this government to ensure a fair and equitable new funding system, which appropriately recognises need and the ability to raise income locally. We have submitted our response to the government's initial consultation on funding, and we await the outcome of this. As the leader outlined earlier, regarding the level of council tax increase for the coming year, the local government finance settlement published by government permitted a council tax rise of 4.99%. Raising council tax remains a difficult decision for all councils. If we do not raise council tax, we will need to cut services and reduce our investment into key priority areas. That would mean cuts in services to those most in need in our communities and to the services which residents tell us are a high priority. In order to prevent further cuts to frontline services and enable some essential investment in key priorities, it is proposed to increase the core council tax by 2.49%, lower than the maximum permitted, and I understand the lowest increase in the region. And the adult social care precept for 25-26 by 2% for the next year. Madam Mayor, I feel it is important to reiterate what the leader has outlined. We will continue to protect our most vulnerable residents through providing excellent social care and welfare services, and financially through our council tax support scheme, which supports around 30,000 households in this city. The budget proposals also continue our significant capital investment over the next 4 years, and for my portfolio, there are plans in place to invest over £8.3 million on a range of projects. This includes continuing investment into the Council's property portfolio, including planned maintenance at Bishop Wearmouth Cemetery, continued decarbonisation and energy efficiency works, smart city initiatives to deliver further fibre and 5G network infrastructure, and through further investment into the Council's essential ICT infrastructure and equipment. Our smart city initiatives are having a profound and transformative impact on residents, communities, businesses and visitors through our long-term approach to investment in partnership with government and the private sector, supporting public service delivery, energy efficiency, smart play, assistive technology, damp and mould sensors in homes, river safety, visitor attractions and connected transport, all underpinned by AI capabilities and innovation. Our trial of autonomous mobility underpinned by 5G is reimagining Sunderland's transport infrastructure, defining autonomous operations in the real-world city environment. And I would recommend to anyone who has the opportunity to take a ride on the autonomous bus, it is an experience worth having. Over 5,500 homes have been fitted with technologies to help keep vulnerable and elderly people safe. Sunderland is making sure that no one is left behind, having introduced a citywide digital inclusion network and established 23 digital hubs in the heart of communities, with more to come. Those hubs have served over 460,000 visits to date, with over 60,000 users accessing free Sunderland Wi-Fi every month, and an increase in full fibre by 42% over the last 2 years, which means both families and businesses are benefiting from the Council and its valued partners' commitment. With that, Madam Mayor, I fully commend this evening the budget proposals presented by the Leader of the Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to invite the portfolio holder for Environment, Transport and Net Zero, Councillor Leonard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I'm pleased to endorse the budget proposals presented this evening by the Leader of the Council. I would like to commend the work that has gone into this budget, given the spending pressure that not just ours face, but councils up and down the country. Services that fall within my portfolio aren't necessarily glamorous, but they are essential. They are the nuts and bolts that allow the council, businesses and residents to function, expand and grow and realise our ambitions for the city. This includes introducing and maintaining essential infrastructure and the development of transport services so that people can get around the city efficiently and safely, ensuring the city area, Washington and the coalfields are clean, attractive and accessible for all. We are also working hard together with our partners towards being a low-carbon council and city tackling climate change, not forgetting that our regulatory services ensure that businesses can operate, employees can work, residents can live and visitors can enjoy all that we have to offer in safety and without harm. The environmental transport and net zero portfolio, together with my cabinet colleagues' portfolios, combined in successfully delivering our city plan of Sunderland being a clean, green, welcoming, safe and accessible place that residents are proud of, businesses want to invest in, and people from all around the country and indeed the world are compelled to want to come and visit. And so the budget proposals under my portfolio presented this evening include further investment in coastal defences, ongoing regeneration across our parks and open spaces, improvements to the parking offer at Herrington Country Park, and continuation of the tree management programme and investment in the refuse and environmental services fleet, and plans to support our frontline staff with investment in a new depot in the Coalfield area, so that we can continue to deliver the services that our residents don't just value, but absolutely rely on. The budget extends to developing active travel options to support our commitment to improving health and reducing inequalities, at the same time as contributing to the development of sustainable low-carbon travel and transport right across the city. Key active travel schemes at Dame Dorothy Street, European Way are nearing completion, with more planned towards the south of the city too, which will deliver a safe citywide cycle network for residents, introducing sustainable transport schemes supporting the North East Mayor's transport plan. And then in terms of supporting our commitment to make all parts of the city clean, welcoming and safe, our other regulatory functions, including planning and licensing, are key to support economic growth and business investment across key sectors. Ongoing investment in our environmental enforcement function also plays a vital role. We are continuing to invest in reducing our carbon emissions, harnessing the energy of our young people, our businesses, our partners and all our residents, as well as securing external funding wherever possible, to play our part as a city in tackling the global challenge of climate change, which work has been recognised and rewarded nationally, regionally and globally. As well as measures to reduce emissions across our operational estate, this also includes the delivery of electric vehicle charging hubs across the city, providing more opportunities for the residents who are making the change to electric vehicles. Significant improvements in Bishop Wearmouth Crematorium is also planned to be delivered as part of the budget. And with this in mind, Madam Mayor, I believe that we are demonstrating an ambitious and joined-up approach to delivering the city plan based on a clear set of priorities, and I am therefore pleased to commend the budget proposals presented by the Leader of the Council this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd now like to call upon the portfolio holder for Housing, Regeneration and Business, Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As noted by the Leader and colleagues, as a council, we must continue with the delivery of our ambitious city plan. I am therefore pleased to endorse the budget proposals moved by the Leader of the Council this evening. The city plan outlines our significant ambitions moving forward and our achievements on this journey to date. We recognise the need to grow and to enable our city to become as self-sustainable as possible, and my portfolio plays a key part in this through our regeneration and our housing activity and our support of businesses as we continue to work hard to create an environment which enables growth here in Sunderland. The budget proposals within my portfolio therefore continue our significant capital investment over the next 4 years. I am delighted that the budget proposals include plans to invest nearly £281 million on a range of exciting schemes, with £161 million programmed in for 2025 to 2026. As can be seen all around us, the development of Riverside Sunderland is very much underway, with a skyline that visibly changes by the week. This includes the construction of the new Sunderland Eye Hospital, Culture House and the new Riverside Park as just a few examples. Looking beyond the city centre, we continue our investment at the International Advanced Manufacturing Park and also at Hillthorne Business Park in Washington. IAMP will be the home of the first large-scale gigafactory in the country, which is currently under construction, building on AESC's long-standing track record at its existing facility. With hundreds of millions of pounds of private investment by AESC into their new battery production facility, alongside Nissan's commitment to building further new models at the Sunderland plant. We were also delighted to be able to make the announcement recently of Jatco about their new UK manufacturing plant, another £50 million worth of investment, which is set to create 183 jobs here in Sunderland. By working together, this will drive our green economy and importantly bring valuable new jobs to the area in the months and years to come. And with the establishment of the new International Advanced Manufacturing strategic site as part of the North East Investment Zone, expanding on the success of the IAM to date, this scale of investment demonstrates Sunderland is the place to do business, as the Leader mentioned before. Then, Madam Mayor, turning back to the next exciting developments at Riverside Sunderland, in partnership with our NHS partners, the construction of the new Sunderland Eye Hospital is well underway, with completion due in spring 2026. And as I mentioned earlier, Culture House Sunderland will be complete and open this autumn. Culture House will be the National Centre for Creative Smart Cities and will serve as an exciting multi-purpose cultural venue, including being the new home of the City Library. Just ahead of Culture House, the construction of the new Weir Footbridge, our very own Wembley Way here in Sunderland, will be complete in the summer and play a key role in connecting communities on both sides of the river, providing quicker and easier access to all the exciting new developments, including Sheepfold Stables, which has been an absolutely fantastic success since it opened in August 2024. And I want to emphasise, Madam Mayor, and pay tribute to the fact that this demonstrates, by the likes of Sheepfolds and the two office buildings behind us here in Maker and Faber, the private sector is very much coming with us on this journey. And we are committed, Madam Mayor, to continue to provide financial assistance in the form of economic development grants to further stimulate inward investment and job growth in key sectors by businesses of all sizes across the whole of the city, as well as maximising the support to businesses that we can enable through external funding. This is also further planned investment into Sunnyside, with the Sunnyside Place strategy launched in October, developing new and better homes and providing new workspaces, with the council already having invested in improving community safety in this location. These investments will support regeneration of further key locations in the city centre, and alongside the housing developments of Riverside and West Park on the former Civic Centre site, we will continue to deliver of high quality, energy efficient, low carbon and affordable new homes in sustainable communities. And again, the drive and ambition of the council is bringing others with us. The delivering of investment from central government. A Labour government is backing us here in Sunderland with the announcement in November of more than £41 million of external grant funding, unlocking Riverside Sunderland's next phase of development. Madam Mayor, there can be few local authorities across the UK that are leveraging funding more effectively than here in Sunderland to ensure that our city's transformation can continue at pace and at a scale that matches our ambition. When we make these bids for funding, it is backed up by delivery, and as residents have seen across the Riverside Sunderland site, there is a growing sense of momentum that is fuelling a once-in-a-generation transformation in the heart of our city, with the result a better place to live, work and play for all our residents. To help us achieve this, we're also working with our Redchester providers, as well as private sector investors and developers to support us on this journey. And on that note, Madam Mayor, the Council is proud to be supporting Education Partnership North East, which incorporates Sunderland College in the new Housing, Innovation and Construction Skills Academy being developed at the Stadium Light side of Riverside, Sunderland. HICSA will enable our residents to develop the skills needed to equip them to access skilled and well-paid jobs within our local economy, both in modern methods of construction and in retrofitting. With all this, Madam Mayor, it can be seen that we continue to support and invest in our comprehensive and coordinated regeneration ecosystem in skills, jobs, supporting businesses, supporting partners, developing housing and building the high-quality infrastructure that's needed here in Sunderland. A Labour Council, backed by a Labour Government, creating widespread opportunities for all our residents in Sunderland. I therefore commend the budget proposals presented by the Leader of the Council this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will deal with the amendments to the budget proposals that were moved by the Leader. Notice has been received of the proposed amendments and all Council members have been sent a copy. I would remind Council that a recorded vote will be taken on each amendment and then a single vote on the substantive motion. We will deal with the majority opposition group's amendment first. Councillor Edgeworth, will you please move the proposals in your group's amendment to the Revenue and Capital Budget by reading them out?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Our amendment is as follows, with a revenue budget. Reduction of support costs for area committees linked to the reduction in the number of area committees from 5 to 3. Reduction in the number of area committees to 3 committees and 3 neighbourhood boards, giving a saving of 2 chair and vice chair SRAs. Reduction and scrapping of councillor allowances and expenses, which is comprised of a 5% reduction in the basic allowance, a 20% reduction in the leader, deputy leader, cabinet member SRAs, a 20% reduction in opposition party leader SRAs, reduced SRA for chair of scrutiny coordinating committee to £4,143, a 20% reduction in SRAs for chairs of thematic scrutiny committees, area committees, planning and highways committee, and licensing and regulatory committee. Abolish all vice chair SRAs, a 20% reduction in SRAs for members of the Adoption and Permanency Placement Panel and Fostering Panel, 20% reduction in SRAs for Audit and Governance Committee Chair and independent members, abolition of the positions of Mayor and Deputy Mayor and associated SRAs and replacement with an unpaid elected chairperson, change travel allowance policy so expenses can only be claimed when travelling outside the North East region, abolish all provision for subsistence claims and abolish provision for reimbursement of broadband and telephone costs. To remove the corporate communications budget, including retainers with Creo Communications and Different Narrative, scrap the resident survey and resident newsletter, remove the budget for carbon reduction, introduce a full paperless system for meeting agendas and documents unless there's any accessibility issues which require hard copy documents as a reasonable adjustment, end the use of council vehicles for travel for the Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Cabinet members and councillors, scrap the Mayor's hospitality budget, including provision of alcohol cellar and providing free food to guests, scrap the foreign travel budget and prohibit internal flights of council staff and elected members when travelling within the United Kingdom, except from business travel to and from the North of Ireland. And for Anthony Mullins' benefit, I'm defining the North of Ireland as the following counties in alphabetical order: Antrim, Armagh, Derry, Down, Fermanagh and Tyrone. End free parking for councillors at St Mary's Car Park. Stop all funding and sponsorship for award ceremonies, both hosted and attended by the council. And to cancel subscriptions of the following membership organisations: Cooperative Councils Innovation Network, Industrial Communities Alliance, Key Cities, Local Government Information Unit, New Local Government Network and the Healthy Cities Network. And that's our total revenue savings of £2,622,366. I'll now move on to our revenue spending proposals, which are to reduce the council tax increase by 1.5%, to employ 3 additional environmental services staff, 2 full-time equivalent environmental enforcement officers and 1 anti-social behaviour officers, to employ 4 additional dog wardens with responsibility for the following areas: Doxford and Sandhill wards, Millfield and Pallion wards, Fulwell and St Peters wards and Barnes and Hendon wards. Reverse any planned increase in allotment rent charges for 25-26. Create a new wheelie bin fund to assist households who need a larger 360-litre household waste bin. Reverse the 25-26 increase in the brown bin tax. Reinstate free after 3 parking in all city centre car parks it previously applied to. Introduce free after 3 parking in the Riverside multi-storey car park. Hire 2 full-time traffic wardens with responsibility for 1. Durham Road, Chester Road, Hilton Road, St Luke's Terrace, St Gabriel's Estate and neighbouring streets, and number 2, Sea Road, Fulwell Road, Whitburn Road, seafront areas and neighbouring streets. Employment of a park ranger role with responsibility for Barnes Park Extension and Burn Park, and in a maintenance fund for Barnes Park Extension and Burn Park Ranger. A fund to centrally pay for renewing airtime for 5 years for CCTV cameras that have been initially paid for by ward budgets and area committees. So our total revenue spending proposals of £2,622,366. Our capital budget savings are proposed to reallocate the Washington F. Pitt Heritage Visitor Centre and Albany Park improvements, sale of the Mayor's chain, ceremonial mace, Chief Executive's wig and the OGR1 number plate. And our capital spending proposals are as follows. Buckle in for this. Additional investment in highways maintenance budget of £1.9 million. Feasibility study into acquisition of public park in the Ford and Pennywell area. Feasibility study into establishing a dog park at site in Barnes Park or Barnes Park Extension. Installation of a permanent enforcement camera to prevent and issue fines for illegal parking on Ebden Lane, Fulwell. Convert existing zebra crossing outside Seaburn Metro and Station Road, Fulwell to a Pelican crossing. Install Pelican crossing at Front Road, Fordfield Road Junction. Install Pelican crossing at Springwell Road near Springwell Medical Centre. Install physical barriers across one of the 2 lanes at the junction of Derby Street and Tunstall Road, so only one lane out of the street is accessible for cars exiting using the one-way system. Install Pelican crossing on Tunstall Road near junction with Tunstall Terrace. Install 2 chicanes on West Moor Road to slow traffic. Install 2 chicanes on Mid Moor Road to slow traffic. Narrow Durham Road to one lane between the junctions with Elmwood Terrace and Beechwood Street to prevent speeding. Repaint railings on lampposts in St Luke's Terrace. A fund to remove the coat of arms from the front of the former City Library, restore it and display it at City Hall or Culture House, with funds to have it hung. A bus shelter fund delegated to area committees to provide shelters at existing bus stops which do not have them. Upgrade the Chester Road, Springwell Road, Holborn Road roundabouts to traffic light controlled junction. Amend the layout of junctions on Toronto Road and Telford Road, Thanet Road and Telford Road, and Truro Road, Thorndale Road in Thorney Close. Install fencing and barriers at the entrances of Stirling Close into the Barnes Park extension. Install fencing along the boundary with Hastings Hill Farm from North Farm Avenue along Totnes Close, Tilbury Road to Summer Hill. Installation of bollards on pavement outside Hastings Hill Shop. Install traffic calming measures on Cleveland Road in the form of 2 chicanes between Ormond Street and Ettrick Grove. A contribution towards road and pavement resurfacing in city cemeteries. The procurement of vehicle-activated signs for Durham Road in Thornhill, Burden Lane in Docksford Park, Burden Road in Docksford Park and Dovedale Road in Fulwell, and the installation of double yellow line waiting restrictions at the junction of Sevenoaks Drive and Chester Road in Hastings Hill. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Fagan, do you second the amendment?
I'll second the amendment, Madam Mayor, and speak straight after Paul, if I can.
Councillor Edgeworth, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'd like to say thank you to Paul Wilson and Claire Emerson and their teams for dealing with a group of Liberal Democrats with such patience over the last few weeks and months. Thank you to them. Liberal Democrats have an incredible budget amendment here that's going to put local people first and make Sunderland great again. Because for too long, the Labour Party running this city have been wasting our money hand over fist, throwing it away on stupid and ridiculous things that don't help our people and our communities. But if our budget amendment gets back in from all councillors, then that ends today. We're cutting the waste and we're going to save council taxpayers a fortune. No more taxpayer-funded nonsense. We're getting rid of stupid, wasteful spending. We'll abolish ridiculous memberships for organisations that don't deliver anything. We're scrapping millions of pounds spent on spin and outside PR agencies to try and convince us of what a great job Labour are doing. It's a joke and we'll cut it. We will axe the useless taxpayer-funded propaganda newsletters. If this Labour Council did its job properly and delivered cleaner streets, better roads and pavements, safer communities and decent services, then it wouldn't need to spend millions of pounds of our money on propaganda newsletters, because people would know by looking up and down their street or around the city centre whether or not the council was doing a good job. We'll scrap the resident newsletter, which only tells people the blindingly obvious. We'll scrap foreign travel and funding awards ceremonies. We'll end the taxpayer-funded food and booze by shutting down the Mayor's alcohol cellar. Liberal Democrats want to stop Labour politicians from wasting your money on their pet projects. We need better services in our communities instead. We need action to fix our roads, clean up our streets and make our estates safer. We need more common sense, and this Liberal Democrat budget amendment will deliver it, if only Labour councillors have the chutzpah to back it. Liberal Democrats will cut the fat when it comes to inflated councillor allowances, expenses and perks. Say goodbye to the free rides and chauffeur-driven cars and the free parking for councillors in St Mary's car park while everyone else has to pay the inflated prices. Under our plans, that will be gone. We will cut every councillor's allowance by 5%. We will slash special responsibility allowances. The leader, deputy leader, cabinet, all of them getting paid too much, so we're saying take a cut, 20% across the board. The opposition leaders, cut. The scrutiny chairs, cut. The vice chairs, abolished. The mayor, the deputy mayor, gone. We don't need them. We'll have an elected chairperson and they're not going to be paid an allowance to do it, because that's what public service should be. We are selling the mayor's chains and the ceremonial mace. We can't indulge in pointless jewellery when we're asking people to pay more and get less from this council. And we're selling off the chief executive's wig, the 18th century called "They Want Their Wig Back." We're selling the indulgent OGR1 private number plate. This Lib Dem budget amendment takes money out of the hands of Labour politicians getting chauffeured around, attending events, taking gifts and freebies, and instead we're giving it back to the hard-working people of Sunderland. And we're not just saving money, we're going to give it back to you too. Under our amendment, we'll reduce Labour's council tax rise by nearly £2 million. We'll freeze charges for garden waste bin collections and allotment rent charges. not just saving money, but giving it back to the residents. Actually reducing taxes, which you never hear from Labour. They're hiking taxes nationally, making it impossible to run a small business, and of course they're hiking council tax by almost the maximum amount again this year. Labour always want more of your money, where Liberal Democrats have had enough. We want to put more of your money back in your pocket where it belongs. Now let's talk about what else we're going to do with the money saved, because it isn't just about cutting waste, it's about delivering for the people. We want to fix the roads, because let's be honest, they're a disaster. And we're going to put 1.9 million into extra desperately needed road and pavement repairs, which local people time and time again say is one of the biggest failings at this council. We also want to put £100,000 into road and pavement repairs in our cemeteries to finally fix the disgraceful paths and road surfaces in the likes of Bishop Wearmouth and Mere Knowles cemeteries. This takes our road and pavement repair plans to well over £2 million. We want to clean up the streets, hire extra council staff to crack down on litter, fly tipping, dog fouling, antisocial behaviour. We will make sure CCTV cameras are properly funded and their future secured. We'll make sure communities get new bus shelters in the face of years of neglect from Nexus. We're going to hire more traffic wardens to focus on hotspot areas like Durham Road, Chester Road, Hilton Road, St Luke's Terrace, Sea Road, just to name a few. People are sick of illegal parking, sick of people breaking the rules. Local people are also fed up with crime, antisocial behaviour, irresponsible dog owners. Liberal Democrats would take action and get results. And let's talk about parking. 3 after 3 is coming back to city centre car parks under this plan because Liberal Democrats support businesses and support the local economy. Unlike the Labour Party, we actually want people to come into the city to shop, to spend and make the economy boom again. And we also want to provide affordable, safe spaces for female workers in our nighttime economy to park when they go to work. This is common sense. This budget amendment would be a game changer. Liberal Democrats would take back control, put an end to waste and give the people of Sunderland the services they actually want. We'd also allocate funding to the communities that we represent because residents expect their councillors to fight for a fair deal for their local communities, not just roll over and do whatever Keir Starmer and Kim McGuinness tell them. Liberal Democrats would deliver a safe pedestrian crossing outside Springwell Medical Centre. We'll install fences to tackle cars, vans and quad bikes terrorising communities on either side of the Grindon Sandhills and the Barnes Park extension. We'll crack down on problem parking at Hastings Hill shops and outside the Hastings Hill pub. We'll spruce up St Luke's Terrace. We'll provide a dedicated park ranger member of staff for Barnes Park and Burn Park. We'll secure the future of green spaces in Ford and Pennywell and create much-needed dog park for people to safely exercise their pets. We'll tackle speeding across Docksford Park, Fulwell and High Barnes. We'll make roads safer across Thorny Close, Ford Estate and Thornhill. And we'll provide a safe pedestrian crossing outside Seaburn Metro Station. And finally, we'll commit to improving the terrible Broadway roundabout junction at Springwell Road and Holborn Road. Let's be clear. This budget amendment is about fairness. It's about stopping the waste and stopping the nonsense. Liberal Democrats want to make the city safe again, clean again, affordable again. Let's get rid of the waste, let's cut the nonsense and let's give the people of Sunderland what they deserve. A council that works for them, not for the Labour Party. A budget that puts Sunderland first, not the politicians, not the gravy train riders. We want to cut the waste, cut the nonsense and put the people back in charge. Liberal Democrats are going to keep fighting and together, starting with this budget amendment, we can make Sunderland great again. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Edgeworth. Before I invite Councillor Fagan to speak, can I just remind members it's quite rude when people are trying to talk and there's shouting going on across the chamber. So while people are speaking, would you mind remaining quiet? You will have the opportunity to speak when asked to do so. Thank you. Councillor Fagan, would you like to speak on the amendment?
Hi, thank you, Madam Mayor. The Lib Dem budget represents a fair deal for the residents of Sunderland. Whilst we have to acknowledge the tight budgets we are facing thanks to the Tory decisions, we have also had to accept that the new Labour government are not willing to give helping hands to cities like Sunderland where voters are taken for granted. In respect of the revenue savings that we have proposed to cut council allowances, I feel strongly that councillors should be sharing this cost of living crisis with residents and we should not be taking a cut in our allowances, not increasing them. Many residents have not had a pay rise for years and in real terms some have experienced a pay cut. As councillors we really should reflect that by also taking a cut. We have also proposed to scrap the resident survey and newsletter. Any hard-working Lib Dem councillor will tell you that we don't need the council to go out to residents to ask how they feel about the city in their area. These surveys always return low numbers of participants anyway and do not give a true picture of how the wider population of Sunderland feel. I would suggest that instead political parties carry out their own surveys and provide residents with regular newsletters like the Lib Dems do. It is our duty as councillors to be seeking views from residents and working towards what they want to see happening in the city. A bit of legwork carried out by active councillors can save the council nearly £150,000 per year. I won't go over all of the proposed revenue spending in our budget amendment. I was going to say, because Paul's already covered it in detail, I did, however, want to highlight one item in our proposed amendment that I know is important to the residents in Sunderland, and this is around the reinstating free after three parking. I'll never give up raising this, along with Meg, as a genuine concern. This isn't even a political football to kick about. Whilst, of course, removing the free parking has impacted visitors coming to the city to shop, it also hugely impacts residents who work in the city centre on an evening. I've been contacted by a number of residents who have young adult children, often students on minimum wage, who work in the pubs and clubs of our city centre and are now having to make the choice of paying a fortune to park in the city centre close to their workplace, or parking out on the edge of the city and walking back to their cars in the early hours of the morning after a shift at the pubs and clubs have finished. Last week in scrutiny we heard how the city is aiming to become a purple flag city, and to obtain this status we have to demonstrate that we are a safe and vibrant evening and nighttime destination. I fail to see how we can reach this whilst we have a nighttime workers forced to park on the edge of the city because they can't stomach the extortionate charges to park closer to their workplace. I also fail to see how councillors can vote against this while also voting in favour to keep free parking for councillors. Turning to the capital budget and the proposed savings we have put forward, a huge amount of money sits waiting to be spent on the FPIT Visitor Centre. I fully support removing this and spreading the money across the whole of the city into other much needed areas such as road repairs and making streets safer. In the Doxford area we need additional bus shelters. Due to bus route changes we now have our elderly waiting out in the rain with no shelter at some stops. We have a huge amount of new homes being built, resulting in increased traffic and damaged roads that need frequent repairs due to the amount of construction traffic moving around, and the current highways maintenance budget does not cover all of these much needed repairs. With the additional traffic, more residents are raising concerns about speeding and asking for speed calming measures such as vehicle activated signs in areas like Burden Lane and Burden Road. Our ward improvement budget only stretches so far to be able to put these in place. Our proposed amendment would address many of the issues that residents regularly raise with us. In my years as a councillor, no one has ever raised the issue of the FPIT as a want, but we'll talk all day long about the state of the roads, traffic concerns, cleanliness of our streets and dog poo in our parks. These are the changes and improvements the people of Sunderland want to see, and our budget proposal puts these asks in place. As we are in a cost of living crisis, such huge expenditure on one pet project like the FPIT seems frivolous when we don't have the money to address the basics of the city and strive to keep residents safe and deliver value for money. I therefore fully support our amendment, which has been formed by listening to concerns and putting them first. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I have been advised that the following councillors wish to speak on the amendment. Councillors O'Brien, Hodson, Duncan, Mullen and Hartnack. Does anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? If so, would members please indicate accordingly.
Councillor Ty, Councillor Scott, Councillor Jones, Councillor Leonard. So, Madam Mayor, these speakers are Councillors O'Brien, Hodson, Donkin, Mullen, Hartnack, Ty, Scott, Jones, Leonard, and the leader has the right of reply.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Paul, for delivering such a dramatic change to Sunderland's Labour's austerity budget. Because let's make no mistake, I will go on about this at length when I speak on your budget later on, but let's make no mistake that the Liberal Democrat budget stands up for residents of this city, residents who we represent, not Keir Starmer and Kim McGuinness, who your cabinet seems to want to represent. One strange thing I have noticed, which I will go on about in great detail later on, is that the sheer lack of enthusiasm from your bench for your own budget. Not many claps over there, was it? Come on, well, weak and feeble, some might say. So, one of the Tories' greatest Prime Ministers would probably say that. Weak and feeble is the Labour front bench. Just to go on a bit about some much-needed spending in Sandhill. Great, Paul. Appreciated. Thanks for listening to mine and Meg's concerns. A leader for the city and a leader in our ward. As always, I prefer you over any of these, any day of the week. And come 2026, I'm sure we'll install a Liberal Democrat leader of this council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hodson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor of Sunderland. My colleague Heather Fagan mentioned the great value of the fantastic local newsletter Focus, which I know is enjoyed by thousands of residents across Sunderland. I would go so far as to say it is the most trusted newsletter in the country, closely followed, of course, by Wetherspoons News. Now, earlier on, Alison Smith mentioned the advanced mobility shuttle, and I would very much like to have a go in that. Interesting to see it. But I had actually heard about it earlier. Michael Mordy posted a picture of himself standing in front of one of these vehicles with the sign, "I'm a self-driving vehicle." And it made me think, actually, that is a very good metaphor for Michael's leadership of this city. Keir Starmer and Kim McGuinness program in the little computer, and off he goes. He's clear on a clear course programmed by his Labour bosses. But what drives Lib Dems? Because we are a little bit more driven by what the people tell us, and I think that was very clear when you listened to what Paul was saying, which I endorse fully. We have put across a budget amendment which deals with what the people want, what they recognise. Now, I've spoken to hundreds of people in Sunderland in recent months, and the number one thing that they said to me was, when are you going to sort out that one way on Derby Street? Yes. Every single one of them. Now, I have to admit, most of those people were in the immediate vicinity of the Thornhill area. But if you think about it, if hundreds of people in Thornhill alone are talking about the problem on Derby Street, if you extrapolate that citywide, it could be an issue, of concern to thousands and thousands of people. Really very concerning, and about time we dealt with it. Now, I am jesting, of course. I know that the party opposite does have a worrying habit of taking everything we say completely literally. But I will say a few things that I do mean completely literally. Now, some of the other things mentioned in our amendment include providing park rangers, an additional budget for park maintenance, especially for some of those parks and park areas like the Barnes Park Extension, like Burn Park, that fall foul of the cuts that this Labour Council has made to park maintenance in recent years. And what we're seeing is that while our council staff do a great job of looking after places like Mowbray Park and Roker Park, lots of the smaller suburban parks are really poorly maintained, badly managed, and would benefit from having that day-to-day maintenance that we are proposing. Likewise, Paul mentioned the provision of traffic lights on the roundabout. This is a major city thoroughfare, the roundabout on Chester Road, Springwell Road, Holborn Road. And what's worrying us is that we've been talking about this for years. We've been raising it with council leadership, with highways for years. Finally, there's a proposal, a consultation. We were promised that it would include something to deal with the traffic lights and the traffic management on that roundabout, and it has disappeared from that consultation. That U-turn is really worrying. We want to put it back in the budget now. Likewise, when we're talking about things that seem to have disappeared and fallen out through the cracks, the maintenance of footpaths and roads in city cemeteries. Now, I understand there are reasons why the council has not been able to maintain these. There are difficult sort of issues about ownership and land maintenance. But it's getting so bad and so embarrassing as a citywide issue that we can't simply sit on it and say it's too complicated. We actually just need to stump up the funds and actually get our cemeteries, which serve the whole city, in a fit state so people can actually use them. Finally, I just wanted to talk about one issue which is covered in our budget, which I think is becoming a real issue of citywide concern. It affects not just residents but also traders and local businesses. there is a feeling of complete lawlessness around parking, particularly on suburban shopping streets. You look at Chester Road, Hilton Road, Durham Road. We've had an absolute nightmare over the past couple of years trying to tackle nuisance parking. We are not dealing with it. It's very clear that the existing resource being put into that area is not fit to cover that problem. And the sense of lawlessness is something that is being repeated to us by residents and by businesses. What this amendment does is try to tackle that. So I hope you'll all endorse it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Always good to follow Niall. Madam Mayor, I just was struck earlier today that it's actually about 6 years now since the first sort of event took place on this site. It was at the Bean. The council asked the organisation that I work for to lead on it because they didn't want it to appear to be council-led. And our chief executive spoke about his plans for the city and how passionate he was about them and how I think it was that time was a 30-year plan. But more recently, I heard him speak at the induction for the council. I was lucky to get elected last year. That was really, really good. And he spoke about how he wants the city to be proud, the people of the city to be proud. Now, having lived in the city for 60 years, Madam Mayor, my family since the 17th century, I can honestly say that there's never been a time when I haven't been proud of our city. Not necessarily proud of how it's become over the last few years. It is fair to say that I'm less proud of the large number of dodgy artist impressions that have been appearing on Facebook and media that pop up on a regular basis and look nothing like what we actually get. And those who've been into our train station will recognise of what I speak. And as for the Culture House, I mean, who's going to feed all of these fish in the Culture House? It's not in anybody's budget. But when the chief officer said that he wanted people to be proud of the city, I understood what he meant. I understood that he wanted people to have civic pride. I get that. The people of Sunderland get that. But pride begins at home, to take a phrase and change it. You don't just turn it on when you walk onto Keele Square and look at the new developments that are cropping up. It's on the streets where people go out on a day-to-day basis and see the infrastructure, many of whom have lived on for many, many years, degrading year upon year upon year. And that's why a lot of the stuff that we've talked about in this budget today, which I wholeheartedly support, is about improving. It's about improving the areas where our residents live, the people who elect us to be here, to support their needs. That's why our budget proposes an increase in the number of environmental officers, so that residents can see that their streets, back lanes and paths in places like Pallion and Millfield and St Gabriel, and I make no apology for mentioning them, have been looked after, have been checked to prevent crime and fly tipping. It's a budget that will bring more, bless you, whoever that was, God bless you. It's a budget that will bring more dog wardens onto the streets, discouraging and preventing people from walking the streets and being careless. We've had too long of people's pets peppering the streets with poo and covering the tarmacs with turds. It's about time we had people there to do that. We need to put more people in that, because that's what people tell us they want in Sunderland. Our proposals also look to street parking. And my colleagues have mentioned about the chaos that ensues on St Luke's Terrace and Hilton Road and Chester Road and around St Gabriel's, where I make, again, no apology of mentioning that we have cars, taxis parking on a regular basis, blocking, creating problems for residents to get out of their houses. I make no apology about that. Those are the things that need to be on there. And Sea Road. God bless you, sir. But there are other places. You know there are other places. Why isn't it there? Why isn't it there in your comment? Why isn't it there in your budget? Why aren't you mentioning specifically? Demonstrating our commitment to tackling the issues in this town is what this party is about and what this party here stands for. Madam Mayor, we understand that families are facing great problems. Only today, inflation went up from 2.49% to 3%. Our proposal reduces the impact of council tax on hard-pressed people in the city. So in summary, Madam Mayor, these measures reflect our dedication to supporting the people that we represent who've elected us, and every member in this House should be doing that, irrespective of party. Could I just mention on one point perhaps, or will that come, Madam Mayor? I just wanted to mention a point that Councillor Jones mentioned earlier about cohesion, or can I speak when...
Thank you. Councillor Mullen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I also start by thanking Claire and Paul for their help with the opposition budgets? And after this, can I also congratulate them on their good sense of humour? I'm going to start with a very niche joke. It's for my benefit, probably more than anybody else's. It's tempting to ask if this amendment has been inspired by the events of 1886, given it features the Liberals parting company with an old wig and some dodgy views on the Constitution of Ireland. But looking more closely, it transpires that this is actually inspired by Conservative budgets of previous years. Because in fact, as we went through that, the proposals for Barnes got progressively closer to my house. I was half expecting that as I turned the page, there would be an offer to paint my back room and do my ironing as well. But things like the removal of funding for Creo Comms, which works for both the Council and the Labour Party simultaneously, which requires further investigation, the deletion of the F-pit, the creation of a highways maintenance fund, traffic lights at the Broadway, removal of mayoral cars, are all things that first appeared in our budgets, not theirs. But this, of course, does mean that the Conservative group can support this amendment, despite some reservations and problems with things that Liberal Democrat councillors have said about it. There's new provision for enforcement in the Barnes and Hendon, in the Sandhill and Doxford wards as pairs, but this does rather overlook the existence of the St Michael's ward, the Silksworth ward and the St Chad's ward, which sits geographically between them. Is it the case that the Liberal Democrats are saying that these new wardens would actively avoid any action in these areas because they do also need it? The proposal to have a maintenance fund for Barnes Park is a welcomed addition to the already existing maintenance fund that the park has, paid for, of course, by the licence agreement through running events in the park, which the Barnes councillors get to spend exclusively in the park. The suggestion of turning Barnes Park into a dog park is a brave move, given that in recent years public support has been for limiting the presence of dogs in the park, and I draw attention to the signs that I've had installed at both entrances to the park, advertising the limited spaces in which dogs can be allowed off their leads, and the subsequent fines issued for people who transgress this. Chicanes on Cleveland Road, along with speed bumps, were consulted on in 2021-22, and all residents said no to these on the basis that it would take up much needed parking space. What they instead asked for was a 20-mile-an-hour zone, which in 2022 they got. What it needs, though, is proper enforcement of this speed limit through the introduction of speed cameras, and to tackle what I've referred to in the past as the wider culture of speeding that exists on Cleveland Road, Chester Road, Ettrick Grove, Barnes Park Road, and Ormond Street. Of course, welcome them identifying the need for parking enforcement on Durham Road, but when I put in an FOI to the council to find out how many times they had reported and requested parking enforcement in their part of Durham Road throughout 2024, the answer was 0, and it transpired that I had actually reported parking problems in their ward more than they had. When the groups are consulted later this year on the future of area committees. It'll be interesting to see if the Liberal Democrats stick to the proposal for reducing us down to 3 committees, or if they'll change their mind by that point. And then finally, I just want to highlight the difference on the Broadway roundabout. The Liberal Democrat plans cost about £1.5 million less than ours, and the reason for that, according to Highways, is that their proposal is to literally put traffic lights on the existing roundabout. There are no changes to the road and no new pedestrian crossings introduced by what they're proposing. That would not be sufficient for the problems that are there. It's why ours costs more than double, but that is what is required. Finally, I just want to return to my pet peeve. I was grateful for Paul Edgeworth's clarification at the beginning, but I will just point out that no airline operating in either the Republic of Ireland or the United Kingdom refers to the North of Ireland. The Government of Ireland Act of 1920 and the succeeding Northern Ireland Act of 1988 refer to it as Northern Ireland. There is no reference in UK legislation to the North of Ireland. It is Northern Ireland. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Hartnack.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With all the benefits for Fulwell in the amendment from the Lib Dems, how can I possibly vote against this amendment? So thank you very much, Paul, and your colleagues. Madam Mayor, it's not often that I can bring myself to agree with the politics of Liberal Democrats, but I must confess that other than the comical aspects of this budget amendment, such as the sale of the Mayor's ceremonial chain, the ceremonial mace and the... Pardon? and the sale of the Mayor's ceremonial chain, the mace and the Chief Executive's wig, along with the sale of the OGR1 number plate, there are otherwise aspects to be applauded within their budget amendment. And may I say that despite those aspects of their amendment being comical and perhaps headline grabbing, I nevertheless think that they have a point around some of the unnecessary pomp and ceremony which goes on in these meetings. Why the Chief Executive considers it necessary to wear a barrister's wig, for example, is rather antiquated when most councils have modernised and given up such practice. But anyway, having considered aspects of the detail of their amendment, the Liberal Democrats have played their hand, Madam Mayor, in this amendment by politicising their submission. It's always politics playing with the Lib Dems, plenty of talking, public misleading, and this amendment to the budget is no exception to that. What they have clearly attempted to do, knowing that their amendment will not be successful, is show their hand as to which wards they're going to strongly campaign on in the 2026 election. That is a shame, that's shameful and takes the public for absolute fools if they think such a strategy will work. That said, however, I can only speak up for Fulwell Ward and say that hard campaigning for the very things that the Lib Dems call for in this amendment, like more proactive traffic controls, enforcement at Fulwell Infant School, Fulwell generally, along with the seafront, has been undertaken, to be fair, by Conservatives and Lib Dems alike. And these have been continually rejected by the Council. This, along with other enforcement activity across the city, not just in Fulwell, and it's been highlighted tonight by colleagues within the Liberal Democrat Party, such as depositing litter, dog fouling, indiscriminate parking, etc., also being rejected by this Council on the basis of not being able to fill vacancies for enforcement wardens. Perhaps the Council will reflect on who they pay extortionate market premium payments to when, despite an extra £10,000 a year on top of £160,000 salaries, the former head of Children's Services still left a role. If we can't recruit and retain enforcement warden roles, the very roles that the public want, then perhaps we should be offering them a market premium payment instead of boosting the pay and pension entitlements of senior staff who are already on huge salaries. The need for a more safe crossing outside of Seaburn Metro Station is also supported, but up until now has been rejected by the Council on the basis that no serious collisions have taken place at that location. It's just a matter of time before someone is seriously injured or worse at that and other locations across the city. The Council needs to be more proactive in preventing such risk within existing
highways budgets. We support, therefore, the Liberal Democrat proposal in this regard, as we do the very wasteful spend on Labour propaganda through the corporate communications budget and residents' newsletters, amounting to a saving of over £1 million a year. Congratulations to the Liberal Democrats for that and for highlighting it again, which we've raised in previous years. Overall, Madam Mayor, this amendment is a mixed bag ranging from good ideas to fairly ridiculous ones. But that said, however, Conservatives on this side of the chamber will be supporting the amendment, as despite its shortcomings, it is a far more sensible and fairer deal for the public of Sunderland than that that's been presented by Labour. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ty.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. And the purpose of me getting up to speak today is to just expose some of the hypocrisy of the Liberals. Yeah. And I think it's been said before, when they're in opposition, and we'll take the opposition when they were trying to get into government 2010 and the promises that were made and the complete betrayal to members of the public that happened then. And I want to hopefully convince members of the public that this betrayal is potentially trying to come around now, and I want to explain the reasons why. Quite clearly, I'm going to speak factually, and we will let the public make up their mind. First of all, I want to assure you, Madam Mayor, I don't have any intentions of you crossing that road and going to cash converters with those chains. I think it's completely unnecessary. It's not required. The Mayor says chains can stay, and the Chief Exec can keep his wig. Not sure I like it myself, but if you want to keep wearing it, you can. But I just want to talk about some of the examples, because I want to talk about some councils that are now Liberal controlled, where in opposition, the Liberals said very much what they're saying here today. I'm going to start off with the first one, BCP Council. Yeah, they got rid of the Mayor. Did they get rid of the allowance? No, they actually put it... Can I continue, Madam Mayor? They actually increased the allowance in that particular case for the chair to £11,566 on top of their basic allowance of £14,458. No, not with Labour support. No, let's stick to fact, please.
Can you remain quiet, please, and let Councillor Ty finish? Thank you.
And the Leader of the Council's allowance is £31,320 plus basic allowance. Incidentally, this newsletter that we seem to have a bit of a problem with, that council has a free newsletter to every home 3 times a year. If I can move on to Stockport Council, incidentally, it's got a free newsletter. Its mayor, still kept your mayor, £11,873.19, basic allowance £10,716, and the Leader of the Council £32,150. Now I'll move on to the most interesting, and some of my colleagues within the Labour group are going to be absolutely shocked at this. Will the Liberals be shocked? Because they should be, but I don't think they will, because this is just what they're like. Liberal Democrat Council, again, free council newsletter, 4 times a year. Yeah, they got rid of the mayor. What did they do? They increased their salary for the mayor alone, excluding basic, to £16,135. They also increased the basic allowance. What to? Another £16,135. Madam Mayor...
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Oh, Madam.
Under Rule 15.5.1, I'm very... always enjoy Phil Tighe's speeches, but I'm not sure what all these other councils have got to do with the budget of Sunderland Council.
Not, Madam Mayor, it's a Liberal proposal, and I'm talking about it. So I can continue, thank you. So you didn't like hearing that. That's the only time we make objections, when you don't like the public hearing what the truth is, but we will continue. So, as I say, the basic allowance of £16,135. Their leader, you knew this answer, that's why you didn't want the people to hear, Paul. Let's tell the people of Sunderland, you pay your leader in Somerset Council
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Point of order.
40,339.
Point of order. Point of order.
Members of the council?
Point of order.
On what rule?
I can't. 15. What? Sorry, Paul. 15.11. Thank you, Paul. Given the fact I'm dyslexic and you should be making reasonable adjustments and not demanding that I know a rule when I cannot read it.
Point of order. You need to explain what the rule is.
It's a reasonable adjustment. It is a point of... What has Somerset Council has anything to do with this council? Liberal Democrats on this side would find that disgusting no matter what. If I was on Somerset Council, I'd be voting that down. If I was... Yes, it is a point of order. Well, what has that got to do with Sunderland Council? We're not
You've
Somerset.
asked the question.
We're not Somerset Council.
Councillor Tighe.
Whatever
Councillor
council he's
Tighe
mentioned.
has said that he's explaining the reason why.
He's not. He's just carrying on. He's carrying on.
Councillor O'Brien, can you please sit down? I've made my decision. Thank you. Councillor Tighe.
Yep, I agree. Somerset Council is a disgrace to its public. We agree on that particular point. But guess what? It's a Liberal council. And what are you? A Liberal. What do? Mislead members of the public. But I will continue. Thank you. On top of this, in 2023, they give their councillors a 5.75% pay rise. In 2024, they give their councillors 4.1% increase. They have the second highest council tax rise in the whole of the United Kingdom at 7.5%, while they were awarding Liberal councillors that sort of pay rise. I'm going to finish on this one point. Who do you think has the highest? The highest council tax rise in the whole of this country? Liberal Windsor Council at 8.99%. How dare you talk to us about council tax, remuneration, when this is how your councils treat the whole country?
Thank you, Councillor Tighe. Thank you. Your time's up. Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Thank you very much, Madam. I'll keep it very brief. Thank you for that one. My colleagues and I would cordially like to invite the Liberal Democrats to the Coalfield area. It seems like it's not been mentioned anywhere within your budget amendments at all, and it does feel a bit like Sonny and Cher, I've Got You Babies playing around the chamber, because I'm clearly referring to Groundhog Day. It's the same budget proposals that we've heard time and again from the Liberal Democrats. Oh, wait, was that the Conservatives? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Jones.
Sit down. Sit down.
Councillor Jones, please carry on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, seeing as Councillor Donkin spoke about turd and poo, I thought I'd speak on this absolutely dreadful amendment. It's not strategic in any sense. Talk about feathering your own nests. There are 25 wards across the city, not just your own or where you intend to target for 2026. Scrapping the resident survey and newsletter and corporate comms budget. We know you deliver your Liberal Democrat letters of lies. Our approach is communicating in a transparent way to share stories, news and hear voices, even if it is a low response. This is only one way that we engage with residents. Scrapping awards. Only last month, you supported a motion at full council committing council support to the cultural sector. So why now remove it? Absolute disgrace. Shame on you. As for the F-pit, perhaps if Washy Steve had spent more time in Washington listening to the residents rather than being here, there, everywhere in his quest to get elected. Proof that perseverance does pay off. I'll give you that. He might have fed back that Washington were really proud of our mining heritage, and it's one of the threads that keeps our community together. the FPIT Regeneration not only celebrates our mining heritage, but the visitor centre will actually bring in revenue. Imagine that, spend to save ethos. I cannot support any aspect of this motion amendment, Madam Mayor. It's very biased. And can I suggest that the self-proclaimed, selfless yellow Tories consider giving up their free council phones when they come back next year for their amendments. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Leonard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's the same old, and I had to look twice because I thought it was actually the same amendment put forward to last year. Climate emergency deniers and selling the family jewels without any consideration for family generations. And I can't work out if I'm disappointed by the amendment itself or I'm disappointed in myself that I thought there would be any serious proposals in your amendment. But as I reflected on them, I was reminded of one of my granddaughter's toys. She has a little map, a town with roads and buildings where they can place stop signs, roadworks, traffic lights and bollards and fences. And I'm sure that's what you've done when you've developed these proposals. Each councillor with their own agenda, replacing bus shelters, roundabouts and traffic lights, while cutting area committees which allocate funds for youth projects, community organisations and other charitable organisations. So when little Johnny and Jenny have no youth provision, at least they will have some bus shelters in Pallion to hang around in. And provisions with no mention for Washington and the Coalfields area, only taken away from them.
Point of clarification, Mayor Sunderland. I think there's, I just think there's been a misunderstanding that's being perpetuated in the debate here. Reading the budget amendment that's in front of you, it describes removing the budget for chairing the area committees, not the budget attributed to those committees. So I just want to clarify that for Lindsay's benefit.
Thank you for that. These plans have no ambitions and aren't worthy for the residents of the city. I mean all the residents, not just the residents of the few wards that are represented by Lib Dem councillors. The focus is primarily on their wards and what they represent only. And I will not be supporting these.
Thank you. Lady, you have the right of reply on the amendment.
Where to start, Madam Mayor? Where to start? No, I think I might start a little bit closer to home, but just on the point Councillor Ty raised, and it was a point well made, because the reason Councillor Ty's contribution was made is because it was to highlight to the city Liberal Democrats in opposition say one thing, and then if they get anywhere near power, they do the absolute opposite. So whatever they're saying now is completely, if the world was to end and we would end up with a Lib Dem Tory coalition, I think Michael, you want to be on across the floor, watch Anthony, I think he wants to save his seat by moving to the Liberals.
Liberal Conservatives?
Liberal Conservative coalition of chaos. It's to highlight the fact that in opposition they say one thing, if they ever get anywhere near power, and the examples that Councillor Ty showed, it should they do absolute the opposite. But in terms of the increase in council tax, Madam Mayor, I would say this. Increasing the council tax is a decision that should not be taken lightly. However, not increasing the council tax is simply not a sustainable or prudent strategy to adopt. Not my words. The words of the Lib Dem leader of Durham County Council, who's just imposed a 4.99% increase on their residents, when we in Sunderland are the lowest council tax rise in the region and the lowest council tax in the North East. Madam Mayor, just to...
Members, I did ask earlier on for the floor to be quiet when somebody's speaking. If you can remain quiet and let the leader finish. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. They're quick to the feet when they get interrupted, but they're quick to dole it out as well. Just in terms of, I'll just touch on what Councillor Edgeworth and Councillor Fagan said. I was struck by Councillor Edgeworth's contribution, this Trumpian isolationist rhetoric coming out. I think we should rename the Liberal Democrat Party the Liberal Reform Party, Madam Mayor, because year after year after year they come to this council budget meeting and try to remove the carbon reduction budget. Climate deniers, every single one of them. And for the fact, selling off the family silver, however, give us a laugh, honestly. But what's important, Madam Mayor, is that their budget amendment doesn't mention health. It doesn't mention social care, children's service, children's social care, education, public health, homelessness. It focuses on the 1/5 of the council that has the unfortunate experience of having a Liberal Democrat councillor. It exposes them for the weak councillors they are, because they can't get things done in their own ward, so they're coming here asking us to do it for them. Well, we will do it as we approach 2026 and we elect Labour councillors in place of the failing Lib Dem councillors, Madam Mayor. But, Madam Mayor, in terms of the parking that Councillor Fagan mentioned, well, first of all, the pay. Pay is actually going up. We've seen that yesterday, 5.6% between October and December, so pay is not falling. In terms of parking, I would say that all on-street car parks and on-street bays are currently free after 3, and all on-street parking, the majority of the bars, are free after 6 o'clock. Just put that out there, Madam Mayor. So effectively to sum up, I just want to say that this amendment is the same old from the Lib Dems. They confirm in their climate change denier status by wanting to reduce or delete the carbon reduction budget. They want to undermine the link between communities and area committees by getting rid of 2. They want to stop the council communicating with its residents by abolishing the comms budget. They don't want to hear the views of local residents as they're proposing scrapping the residents' survey, and they want to keep the city residents in the dark by scrapping the residents' newsletter. This afternoon puts the choice the people of Sunderland have in stark contrast. A choice between Sunderland Labour, who are committed to wanting to actively engage and work with all of our communities in all parts of the city to co-produce strategies and policies for the betterment of Sunderland, to deliver on our long-held ambition to continue our regeneration transformation that will see Sunderland become a connected international city with opportunities for all, or the Wearside Liberal Reform Party, who want to turn the clock back, hold Sunderland down and ignore and keep the residents of Sunderland in the dark. I know what option the people of Sunderland will choose. They will choose the Sunderland Labour way. I urge Council to reject these backward-looking, regeneration-killing, jobs-destroying amendments from the student politicians opposite. Yeah.
Thank you. We will now move to the vote on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If the officers could start the vote running, please.
Madam Mayor, my thing isn't working, my voting.
Madam Mayor, does Paul not get a response to that? No. Okay, let's check.
Can I just check that everybody has got the availability to vote? Except for Councillor Edgeworth, yeah.
and then we'll take the vote.
Members, it's got to be electronic. Members, just while we sort out the technical issues, we will adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes. If you can come back in 5 minutes, please. Thank you.
Members, excuse me, members, we're about to take the vote. If you could take your seats again, please. If members could take their seats again, please.
I think we're ready.
Can members please take the seats? Members, you've got 1 minute to take your seat.
Thank you. So, Madam Mayor, we'll need to take the vote again. So, please, if the officer could start the vote running and just ring the division bell in case anybody is still in the lobby.
Right. It's yours.
Yeah,
John Price.
Yeah.
What's his mark?
So members should be able to vote now.
No.
If anyone's
Yeah.
having any problem, can they indicate?
You haven't hit it? You haven't? You haven't? No. Because you make it.
Still on. So members, the vote will be closing in a moment. Councillor Elms, have you been able to vote? So if the officers could close the vote, please. There are 20 votes in favour and 41 against, and therefore the amendment is defeated.
Thank you. Councillor Mullen, will you please move the amendment to the Revenue and Capital Budget by reading it out?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll deal first with revenue and then subsequently with capital. So we propose reallocating part of the strategic initiatives budget to immediate priorities, totalling £1 million, reduction in the corporate affairs and communications budget, including the projected £115,000 spend on Creo communications, totalling £630,000, reduction in the events budget of £215,727, reduction in the carbon budget of £910,000, cuts to councillors' allowances, including rejecting the proposed Labour and Liberal Democrat increases, totalling £171,339. Moving to a paperless model for agendas in the council magazine, saving £102,150, reducing the member support budget by £50,000, reduction in the Japan-America foreign travel funding of £63,000, reduction in trade union facility time of £120,000, a revised profit projection for the port, saving £50,000, ending the chauffeur-driven cars for the Mayor and Labour Cabinet, saving £51,865, and abolishing the Councillor's expenses budget, saving £35,000. We then propose spending that in the following ways: reduction in Labour's council tax increase, costing £1.3 million, restoring free after three parking in the city centre, costing £90,000, introducing free after three parking at the seafront of Roker and Seaburn, costing £140,000, making all CPMS parking permits free across the city, costing £122,220, implementing 10 new school street schemes across the city, totalling £500,000, introducing 100 new bins across the city, a total of £35,910, recruiting 5 new traffic civil enforcement officers to address hotspot areas, including Chester Road and Durham Road, which is £196,475, 10 new grip bins costing £5,010, 3 park and cemetery enforcement wardens costing £118,140, a revenue contribution to the capital spending on traffic light implementation of £500,000, and a similar contribution to the Road and Pavement Repair Fund, totalling £378,000. In terms of capital, we propose deleting the remaining FPIT budget, saving £3.9 million. The subsequent revenue transfers that I just referred to of £500,000 and £378,000, and they are subsequently spent on replacing the roundabout at the Broadway with a traffic light system totalling £2.8 million, a £2 million road and pavement repair fund, and a £25,000 contribution to the Full War Memorial upgrade.
Councillor Reid, do you second the amendment?
Wholeheartedly, Madam Mayor, and I'd like to speak immediately after Councillor Mullen.
Thank you. Councillor Mullen, would you like to speak on your amendment?
I would, thank you, Madam Mayor. The Conservative Group budget amendment finds over £3 million of revenue savings, including those which we immediately reallocate to strategic priorities across the city, including a £2 million increase to the road and pavement repair fund. Fixing roads and pavements is a cross-party issue, and all councillors put great effort into this, but too often the quality of the repair is poor and the bureaucracy surrounding this process is overwhelming. There clearly exists the resource within the council to increase this budget, at least by some amount. What isn't yet a cross-party issue, and what some remain in denial about, is the need for traffic lights at the Broadway roundabout, a recurring feature of recent Conservative budget amendments. The reason our budget quotes a higher figure for these works than the Lib Dem proposal is that the Conservative outline includes ripping out the roundabout, introducing new crossing points for pedestrians, reconfiguring the road layout on the Broadway, and then subsequently introducing a traffic light system. The Lib Dem proposal keeps the current road layout, doesn't introduce those safe crossing points for pedestrians, but just adds traffic lights to the existing roundabout. Completely insufficient. The already dangerous situation on the Broadway will of course be made worse still if the council continues with its plans to introduce a westbound bus lane from the crematorium to the A19, and it would be shameful if this is done on the back of its North Korea-style consultation, which offers no opportunity for the council to hear from residents that they are saying no, only varying degrees of yes. On enforcement, we support, as we have done for many years, the reintroduction of park wardens with additional responsibility for local cemeteries. The distance from Barnes Park to Bishop Weymouth Cemetery not as great as that between Barnes and Hendon. Our proposals include 5 new traffic enforcement wardens to focus on specific hotspots outside of the city centre, where current attention seems to be focused, so that areas like Durham Road and Chester Road are properly policed. As well as lowering Labour's council tax hike, our proposal saves residents money and supports our city centre by reintroducing free after 3 at all city centre owned car parks. We also extend this to the seafront to encourage the use of legal parking spaces as opposed to mounting the pavement and parking on the grass. Not only do we think that residents should be able to park for free when they're out and about, but we think they should be able to do so at home as well. That's why we've eliminated all charges for all permits in every CPMS zone across the city. The fact that this costs a mere £122,000 to do begs the question why the administration has not found a way to eliminate these costs anyway. The purpose of the scheme is to negate the impact of parking from outside of an area in recognition of issues caused to residents, but the current approach, which doesn't properly work, makes those same residents shoulder the cost of that partial solution. Likewise, the ongoing issue of school time parking continues to be a problem for residents, not just because it blocks access, but because it makes crossing for pedestrians more dangerous as well. Our budget therefore introduces 10 camera-enforced school street schemes across the city, including Washington and the Coalfields, and at St Mary's RC Primary School, Richard Avenue Primary School, and Barnes Infants and Juniors specifically. Colleagues will mention other sites. This amendment acknowledges that both Labour and the Liberal Democrats, and it's important to say this over and over again, supported an allowance increase at our January meeting, and it underscores our continued commitment to remove special responsibility allowances for roles that we do not think require remuneration, vice chairs chief among them. I have no doubt whatsoever that Labour colleagues are about to say no to all of these good ideas, but they should at least take some of them on board for future budgets and, like the Liberal Democrats have done this evening, slowly adopt them as their own. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Under Rule 15.3.1, is it possible to get or ask for a breakdown of the figures of how the Conservative amendment is calculating the £171,339 worth of cuts to allowances? Because we don't have those figures, and I don't feel our group can make an informed decision without knowing how that has been calculated. Thank you.
So under 15.3.1, unless the notice of motion has already been given, you may request to be written down, but it has been handed to you beforehand, so unable to get the figures for you at this moment in time.
Point of order, sorry, Madam Mayor. Under Rule 15.11.1e, is it possible to have a short adjournment so we can get those figures so that we actually know what we're voting on, please? Thanks.
Madam Mayor, through you, perhaps if I can clarify that the provision in the rules is that the Mayor can require a motion to be written down before it's submitted. The motion has been written down and submitted. How that motion has been arrived at, what the thinking is behind it, is a separate matter that can't be compelled in this meeting.
Councillor Reid, would you like to speak on the amendment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd first like to thank the Cabinet for again ignoring a great deal of our suggestions for the budget this year, meaning I can recycle a lot of my lines and jokes from last year, so nobody can accuse me of being a climate denier. Once again, we have reallocated the FPIP budget, maybe for the third or fourth time in a row. One dreads the year when we won't be able to reallocate the seemingly never starting project. With her amendment reallocating this funding to a road and pavement repair fund, we are once again proposing the choice to Labour. Would you rather memorialise holes in the ground or fill them in with a dedicated £2 million extra to repair roads? I know what residents would prefer. We are once again advocating for the reintroduction of free after free parking across the city centre, something that can be paid for by the removal of the council magazine and by adopting a paperless model for agenda. And to give credit where credit is due, I think free after free parking was and is in some cases one of the most popular policies that this Labour Cabinet and Council has brought in recent years. Typical that it was obviously removed despite the uproar from local residents and businesses. And for such a relatively small amount of money of only £90,000 to fully restore free after free parking across the city centre, it's a wonder why this policy hasn't been brought back anyways. Members may remember in my speech from last year where a woman I was talking to was losing most of her wages a week because of the parking charges she was forced to pay. As Councillor Fagan said, driving not only shoppers but also workers out of the city centre. It has a massive knock-on consequences for people. Abolishing councillors' expenses will also allow us to introduce up to 100 new litter bins across the city, going some way to tackle the litter problem. I'm sure all of us can think of places in our ward where we'd like to see 1 or 2 more litter bins installed. And now I'll end this speech on our proposed school street schemes, a long-standing campaign from Conservative councillors. And before I continue, I had hoped that the portfolio holder for transport would have outlined in her speech where in this Labour budget there is funding for school street schemes, given that she came before economic scrutiny is in the recorded minutes to saying that funding would be available. This is indeed one situation where I do desperately hope that the member for I would be able to correct me and prove me wrong. But I wasn't able to find in the documents, and I was told by the finance team that there is no funding for school street schemes in this year's budget. Not only that, but I believe the leader has been visiting Walton promising residents school street schemes personally, but not if you're in a marginal target seat. So if you're a resident in the solid Labour ward in Coalfields or Washington, I wouldn't hold your breath. Nevertheless, though, I am glad to see that the leader and the Cabinet portfolio holder for transport show at least their verbal support for school street schemes. We take these victories where we can get them. Although if this does prove to be a case that school street schemes have been verbally said that they would get them and then there is no funding coming forth, I think that would be a classic case of why people really do hate politicians and politics. School street schemes are an effective way of managing school time parking issues, making schools safer for residents and for school children. If it is true that school street schemes are again being delayed or not funded, then it will prove to me that Labour's so-called open door for budget consultations is nothing more than what I thought it was, which is total nonsense and a massive disappointment. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I've been advised that the following councillors wish to speak on the amendment. Councillors Hartnack and Edgeworth. Does anyone else wish to speak? If so, would members please indicate accordingly.
So, Madam Mayor, the speakers are councillors Hartnack and Edgeworth, and the leader has the right of reply.
Councillor Hartnack.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This Conservative amendment to the budget has a strong offer for Roker, Fulwell, Seaburn and South Bents, and it rightly extends free after 3 parking to the seafront, something which we were told the council was considering before it revoked entirely free after 3. And that's created chaos in residential streets across the area and in Seaburn in particular. And after this council's planning virtually eradicated overnight hundreds of parking spaces in favour of yet further sea-polluting sewage through housing development and very suspicious land deals such as with Inns Collection Group, where land valued at £1.4 million was sold to them for a mere £1,000. Free parking will help to combat the many instances of those who park on grass verges, churning them up in the process by encouraging parking in official car parks. Madam Mayor, we as elected representatives have a duty to our residents, but we also have a duty to our heritage. In that respect, there is no greater duty than that we have to our war dead, those who fell in defence of our country. The Fulwell War Memorial has served as such a reminder to those residing in Fulwell, Seaburn and Roker, but after many years in place, it has become tired and in need of a refresh. After an initial reluctance politically, and I'm going to give a compliment to Labour here, but after an initial reluctance politically, other than from Labour's own Ian Kay to make the improvements necessary, we formed a Friends group, and such is the passion shared with the local population, we've raised an amazing £10,000 by way of public subscription towards the eventual costs in securing a quite magnificent, modern, respectful monument and tranquil memorial garden to an area of public land which this council has neglected over many years. May I personally thank all of those members of the public and venues who have supported this cause. Our budget amendment gives this project a final push so that Fulwell and Roker have a war memorial fit to honour the legacy of those it commemorates. And Madam Mayor, speaking of heritage, there is one thing that is absent from this amendment, that is something we have sadly been advised is now impossible to achieve. We sought permission from the council to include this in our budget, the compulsory purchase of the glass centre site. Our plan was to stop Labour's destruction of glass-making heritage in Roker in favour of moving it to Sunnyside, at a site that I note is in the new council leader's own ward, and perhaps, although he's being a little coy at the moment about his intentions, perhaps his future ward. We were advised that the glass centre could only be acquired if the university agreed to negotiate, and they are not minded to do so. Perhaps this is yet another demonstration of this Labour Council's leadership and gross inadequacy in the art of negotiation with key partners such as Northumbria Police, Network Rail and Northern, and others in getting the best possible deals for the people of Sunderland. In the case of the Glass Centre, I can't help but think that Sunderland Council conspired with the university to destroy Sunderland's glass-making heritage. Shame on you and shame on Sunderland University. The new Glassworks development is the final nail in the coffin of the National Glass Centre. It has already been agreed that both the educational aspects of the current offer will be permanently discontinued and that the art will be moved to new sites. The current situation means that the Glass Centre currently operates on an annual operating loss of £1.5 million, and we should be in no doubt that this is by design, attributable to those who conspired to get rid of it. Previous Labour administrations have, most regrettably, given away a significant part of our cultural offer, and we are, as a direct result, appear incapable of doing anything to save it. Local Conservatives will continue to support the National Glass Centre campaign group, and we will play an active role in helping that group to shape what comes next. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Edgeworth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we were minded to support the amendment, but are unsure on the details in the allowances proposal and what is hidden in there. So unless Councilman wants to intervene and reassure us that there are no hidden increases in that total cut, then we'll probably have to abstain. I think it's disappointing because last year there was a precedent set when there was another vague item in the Tory budget amendment on a referendum. We didn't know what it was, and when it turned out to be a referendum on the City of Sanctuary scheme, it ended up being withdrawn. And I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for information here, but seeing as it's not forthcoming and we're not allowed to know what we're voting on, we'll have to abstain. Thank you.
Leader, would you like the right of reply?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'll keep this quick. I was just going to get up and say no, but I have to pass a comment on Councillor Hartnack's absolute claptrap conspiracy theories. The fact glass making is being protected in this city with resource given by the Labour government through the Arts Council. You had the Arts Minister in the city when you were in government and you did absolutely nothing about it. The fact is, we're 7 months in government, we are protecting the 1,350 years glassmaking heritage in this city. Madam Mayor, the rest of the amendment is just complete and utter nonsense. I'm not going to repeat what I said about the Liberals amendment, but to Councillor Mullen's point, Labour will say no. Yes, we will say no, and I'll ask colleagues to reject the amendment.
Thank you. We will now move to the vote on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So if the officers would open the vote, please, and ring the division bell in case anybody's in the lobby. So, members, the vote will be closing. And if the officer can close the vote now, please. So there are 6 votes in favour, 3 abstentions and 43 votes against. So the amendment is defeated.
Thank you. Does any other member have a comment or question on the original motion? If so, will they please indicate?
So, Madam Mayor, we've had notice from Councillors Edgeworth, O'Brien, Hodson and Mullen. Councillor MacDonough. Councillor Donkin. So the speakers are Councillors Edgeworth, O'Brien, Hodson, Mullen, MacDonough, Donkin, and the Leader has the right of reply.
Councillor Edgeworth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've been doing some research following Phil Tighe's speech, and it seems like Labour-run Bradford has a 9.9% council tax increase. Truly shameful. So despite the desperate attempts by the Leader and the Cabinet to put a brave face on it, this budget shows that Labour austerity is alive and well in Sunderland. No one is buying the lines to take from Keir Starmer and Kim McGuinness's office except the yes-man Leader of the Council. Anyone who's knocked on the door in recent weeks or months to speak to residents will tell you just how horrifically unpopular this Labour government is, and it's not hard to see why. Not only have they broken their promises to the waspy women and betrayed older people by withdrawing the winter fuel allowance, but they're trying to pretend that everything is fine with funding for local councils and local services. This is obviously not true. Under this budget, we face more council tax hikes, more cuts in services and further raids into the reserves. This includes stealth taxes and charges, including a commitment to review car parking charges that officers can't or won't give us details about, expecting us to believe that a specific saving figure has been budgeted for, but there's absolutely no details about whether or not this means further price hikes at car parks. Labour also massaging the figures by suggesting that councils are getting an increase in core spending power But this is only if you factor in the shameful 5% council tax increases, which the Labour government are bullying councils into accepting by suggesting that funding will be further cut if councillors don't vote for the highest possible council tax increase. We showed in our amendment that there is wasteful spending that can be cut in order to lessen the burden on hard-pressed council taxpayers. The council's own budget consultation showed that most people do not agree with a 5% council tax increase, and yet again, Labour councillors are totally ignoring the voice of the people we represent and railroading through almost the biggest possible rise at a time when our residents are still struggling with the cost of living and this new age of Labour austerity. We are alarmed at section 8.3 of the revenue budget report before us, which states that, unfortunately, local government is not a sector that is protected with current forecasts for additional government funding over the medium term, limited to small inflationary increases. Coupled with reports in the press this week that the Labour austerity regime is preparing to ask non-protected departments and public services for an 11% budget cut, then we can see there's little hope of fair council funding in Starmer's Britain. The Local Government Association has warned that without urgent action in the upcoming spending review, councils will remain under severe financial strain due to funding reductions, costs and demand pressures that will continue to rise at an alarming rate and threaten to push many towards the financial brink. The LGA specifically cite new costs associated with employer national insurance contribution changes which have not been fully compensated for by government. And our budget documents before us do the same. Section 4.16 of the revenue budget confirms that it is clear that the national quantum of funding which His Majesty's Treasury are providing for local authorities is inadequate. Section 5.5 confirms that national insurance contributions cost pressures of about 4.5 million in 25-26 and goes on to state that further cost pressures are likely from third-party service providers which seek to recover their unfunded costs from the council. It is absolutely shameful that this government is crippling both local businesses and council taxpayers through their shameful employers' national insurance contribution increases. And the leader of the council and the cabinet are defending it to the hilt like nodding dogs just because Keir tells them to. If this council budget was being presented under a Conservative government, I have no doubt the Cabinet would be decrying the shameful lack of fair funding from central government. But as it is, they're too weak to stand up to their own party in government, even if it's bad for Sunderland. Because of this Labour betrayal of our residents and because we cannot in good conscience vote to increase council tax when there's still wasteful spending that should be cut, Lib Dems will not be supporting the budget. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And might I add a great speech from Paul. Really superb. That's what standing up to Keir Starmer looks like, and that's what Michael Maudy should be doing. However, he's not. What he's doing is presiding over higher taxation, higher inflation, higher cuts, 11% cuts on unprotected services. And not only that, like Paul said, there's a wee bit of a mistruth in this chamber earlier. The highest rise in council tax, not a Liberal Democrat, not a Conservative, but a Labour council.
A Labour council.
A Labour council. Would you believe
Point of order,
it?
what's this got to do with Sunderland?
Would you believe? Very well played, Phil. Touché, my friend. Touché.
Carry on, Councillor
But
O'Brien.
what this shows...
Cite the rule.
Cite the rule. What this shows is a pure lack of transparency from this government. This government came into power for change, for opportunity, to end poverty, to end austerity. What you've done is not done any of that. You've you've increased tax stealthily, untrustworthy, some people might say, on employers. What's that going to do to people's wages? We don't know. Economists say that will turn in, it's gone up by 1%, Michael. The real living wage is gone up by 1%, and that's due to the Tories. And even I'm not that stupid to maintain that. That's due to the last government, not this government. This government's tax proposals comes in April, where you're going to see an increase of employers' national insurance payments, which will suppress wages and which will make Sunderland people poorer. Yep. And we all know that. We all know that. You defend it to the hill because it's your party. When we were in government, you were trashing us for austerity measures. When the Labour government is going into another foreign role and increasing taxation, but increasing cuts by 11% on unprotected services. That is a disgraceful attitude to take. Going into a just war to protect Ukraine is not... You don't have to make cuts. You can do that fairly. You don't have to do that, but Keir Starmer is, because his ideological hero is Margaret Thatcher. That's who he supports. That's who he maintains when he goes into a budget and who he makes striking cuts to local government. And Michael Mordy will get up and say, the age of austerity is over because we only have to cut 39 billion. Do you know what austerity means, Michael? Austerity means when you cut things. You can claim that the end of austerity is nigh, but it's not. It's just beginning. And it's going to be a little bit of a red rose tint to austerity this time, because there's 4 years of government, 4.5 years of government left, 4.5 years of government, and it's going to be 4.5 years of pain, and you lot are just going to take it with a grin on your face, and you're going to vote through all these council tax rises, all these cuts to services, and you have nothing to say. You have no reply to your government. None whatsoever. And it's shameful, and you should be ashamed of yourself. There is a clear alternative in this city. You can vote for hope and change in the Liberal Democrats, or you could vote for the most unpopular party when they've came into government. Do you know who your leader is? Do you know the only Prime Minister he's more popular than was Liz Truss? Every other leader, he is more unpopular. Even Ed Davey has a better approval rating than Keir Starmer. And that's saying something. He jumps off bridges to get that. Keir Starmer just cuts things to get his. The sheer hypocrisy from the Labour Party on this issue of austerity is just fathomable. When you're in government, you just cut. When you're out of government, you go, well, this is evil. This is evil. You say you're not going to combat war. You're not going to go and combat, but, you know, that may happen. This Labour Party has lied through its teeth to get into power, and it will continue to do so, because what's on the horizon for the next 4 years is cuts, and maybe even a reform government, and that's because of you lot.
Councillor Hudson.
Thank you. Well, unlike my friend, I can't see into the future, so I wanted to talk about the present. Now, it's always been hard, especially as an opposition councillor, let alone a member of the public, to find out what this council is doing, what it's spending money on. We on this side tend to find out what's happening in our in the city and in our wards when the council press has already released it to the BBC and the Sunderland Echo. It's frustrating. But I have noticed in Starmer's Britain and under this new direct leadership from Labour HQ, it's become even more difficult for us on this side and for the members of the public to find out what you are doing with taxpayers' money. And actually, I wanted to pick this up on the subject of culture, which Beth Jones spoke about earlier on. Now, Beth Jones mentioned Sunderland's global reputation for culture continues to grow. And even in the documents we've got in front of us on page 234, it says that our timescale for becoming, quote, Sunderland a cultural destination of choice is 25-26. Now, I would say if you work or appreciate the cultural sector in this city, you would find statements like that close to gaslighting. If you've been living in Sunderland and part of its cultural sector in recent years, you would have seen the closure of its central library, the complete reduction of the Northern Gallery of Contemporary Art, the impending closure of its Glass Centre, the cancellation of the air show and many of the city's other events. You would find, I mean, not to forget, failing to become a city of culture in what was really quite a half-hearted bid in the end, I think that you would see statements like that as preposterous. You might then look at the documents we've got in front of us and see on page 150 that despite these claims that our reputation is continuing to grow, and this is one of our key areas for investment, our key timetables for change, we are making a £1.57 million reduction in our cultural budget, including a £423,000 saving in the events budget. So we're cutting culture exactly at the same time as we're trying to say we're trumpeting it. Now, I also heard, I think it might have been Kevin Johnson, talk about the Culture House, and I'm really interested in the Culture House. We've been talking about it in this council chamber for quite a few years. He referred to it as the National Centre for Creative Smart Cities. And I ask you, is that what you said? Yeah. I beg this council, listen to yourselves. Would you go out and say that to a member of the public? Let me say it again. This is what we're investing in. The National Centre for Creative Smart Cities. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words, 0 meaning. Budgets being cut. Absolutely worrying and shocking. People understand the concept of an art gallery, a central library, a national glass centre. I mean, who cares about them? Close them. They're old news. Go on. The news today is the National Centre for Creative Smart Cities. Yep, I think that is going to ring home for lots of people, myself included. Now, on the subject of that, National Centre for Creative Smart Cities, I would like to know, because it's not in the budget here, so this is on page 66 to 68 of the budget pack, and we've been looking at this budget, and I've been asking in repeated budget meetings, where is the sustainability of this funding? You're wanting to build a new cultural centre. This is a significant thing, like building the National Glass Centre was. How can we ensure this is a proper, sustainable investment that will exist for decades into the future? Because it isn't clear in the council's budget funding. And what has really worried me in the past few months is it has become printed fact that we're going to be sticking bits of the glass centre that the university no longer cares to look after in that culture house. So we're undermining exactly the thing that we've been pushing through and funding for the last few years. We still don't know. There's been no clarification because you will not tell us in this council, you will not tell the public what you are doing with taxpayers' money and what you are doing with that enormous project.
Read the Echo.
Well, I will find out in the Echo. But we're the people supposed to be voting on this. And I mean, Paul said, we can't vote on, vague promises. It's not even in here. Beth Jones mentioned, quote, we're going to invest significant funding for Glassworks. I mean, what is Glassworks? It's not in this. Okay. It started fairly recently, but what is it? You will not tell us. You will not tell us where the money's coming from. 5 million from the government for a 7.25 million project. So where's the additional 2.5 million coming from? But more importantly, who's going to run it? Who's going to staff it? Is it going to be? Are we still going to have teaching? What's going to happen to the Northern Gallery of Contemporary Art? What's going to happen to its staff and tenants? What's going to happen to the legacy of glassmaking in this city? What's going to happen to teaching and courses?
Councillor Hudson, time's up.
Is it really?
Thank you. Thank you.
I think that's a good message for the Glass Centre. Thanks, Matt.
I propose an extension, Madam Mayor.
I
second it.
I second that.
Madam Mayor, through you, it's your discretion whether to grant an extension.
And carry on. Hello, Manchester. Reply back.
I was actually coming to a conclusion, but you've given me a second wind. But actually, in fairness, the conclusion I wanted to say is, why am I asking again and again, and why have we been asking the leadership over the last few years for transparency about the funding and the ongoing resource budget for this culture house? It's because we want to know it will exist. It is a mark of shame on this city that we are closing a national cultural centre. That is happening. You can say it's the university's fault, but it is happening on your watch, right? And yes, you are. It is happening under your watch. And the reason I'm banging this drum about the Culture House is because I don't want to see, when this council tires of it and can't be bothered to fund it because we don't know where the money's coming from, it handed over to some other organisation, say a university, and left at their whim to be run for the future. When we're planning investment in culture, we ought to be planning it for the long term, not for the next 2 or 3 years. Thank you.
Councillor Mullen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The most striking thing about this budget for me is that it doesn't in any meaningful way depart from Graham Miller's leadership of the council. And so I challenge the new leader in his right of reply to highlight those elements of the budget which are specific to his leadership and part of his own work. When the Conservatives were in government, both independently and with the Liberal Democrats in support, the City of Sunderland received over £95 million of investment in, among other things, levelling up funding, future high streets funding, UK shared prosperity funding, community renewal funding, heritage action funding, culture recovery funding, and allocations in various budgets, including for Crown Works. Some of this funding was so well received by the Labour group that it has announced it multiple times over and over again, taking credit itself. But during that same period of Conservative government, Labour continued to offer even more, saying they would do things different and better. And there's one particular offer from that time that I would like to draw attention to. The following statements are verbatim and they are fairly unambiguous. We are announcing today that Labour would freeze next year's council tax, and subsequent to that, you can take that council tax rise you just got and rip it up. These statements were not made by our new CV fabricating Chancellor or our cosplay solicitor business secretary, but by, and this one's for you, Alison, our artificially intelligent monotonous bus of a Prime Minister. The promise directly from Keir Starmer was that under Labour, council tax would not increase. But it has. A promise made has become a promise broken. No doubt the mythical £22 billion black hole will be cited as an excuse for why promises on council tax, winter fuel, to waspy women and other groups can't be kept. Yet the government seems perfectly capable of finding new money to fund its efforts to betray and humiliate Britain as it surrenders the Chagos Islands, and equally able to find money to compensate Gerry Adams for his troubles. This is the common sense and decency that Councillor Mordy spoke of in his opening speech. The truth is that Keir Starmer lied to Labour members in order to become leader, and he lied to voters in order to become Prime Minister. Some councils, superficially, might be about to receive more on the face of it, but the reality is that this government has given with one hand and it's going to take with the other. The increase in employers' national insurance, itself a broken promise, threatens to increase costs for Sunderland Council by the back door. Private suppliers to the council who are not being protected from the NICS increase will inevitably have to pass those costs on to us and to our taxpayers. The government has done nothing to assuage the concerns of these employers. The amount that government has given the council to negate this, as we heard scrutiny last week, is simply not enough. All of this, of course, is in the context of today's inflation rise having increased by more than anticipated and economic growth forecasts having been downgraded. And that will be the legacy of Keir Starmer. He will leave office having never honoured the promises he made either to his members or to the country. And while he does that, your group will defend him.
Councillor MacDonagh.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Yes, just two quick questions on this. As the current debt levels of the Council remain at record levels, meaning that we will be paying £37 million in debt interest next year, an increase from £34 million last year, does this worry the leader? And how can we ensure that debt levels are reduced going forward? I'd also question the interest rate figures that we've been presented to us here today. They assume that interest rates will continue to fall, but these predictions have been made in December. Since then, we've seen inflation rise again, meaning that base rates will almost certainly need to rise in the short to medium term, this being backed up by the fact that banks have not cut mortgage interest rates, pointing to a prediction within the industry that rates will rise. The rates on UK government bonds also continue to rise, and unemployment is predicted to skyrocket, partly thanks to Rachel Reeves' disastrous budget, which will also adversely affect interest rates. With this in mind, what provisions will the Council be putting in place to take the hit of higher debt levels than this budget document predicts?
Thank you. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Quick one, this one, everybody's had a good go at this tonight. So, when I was listening to the speeches by the leader and Councillor Jones, Councillor Mordy and Councillor Jones, I heard the mention about £1 million in support of cohesion and inclusion. I think that was right. Did I hear that right, Michael? Did I hear that right? You can't remember? Okay, fair enough.
I weren't listening to you. See what you saying?
That's okay. Yeah, I heard you mention £1 million for cohesion and inclusion, a budget. I think I heard both mention that. Yeah. And obviously this is a response to the fights and the terrible sights that we saw in August the 2nd and what came after that. But what's interesting is that on Friday there's going to be an inclusion and cohesion summit in this building. And the people who were most affected by those riots were the members of the BME community. And would you like to know how many members of the BME community, how many organisations are on that stakeholder team that's standing up on Friday? It's a zero. There are none. ICOS isn't there. Young Asian Voices are not there.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. This has nothing to do with the budget.
Yes, it does. You've mentioned £1 million in the budget for inclusion, and there is no
Point
inclusion.
of order, the event on Friday doesn't
state the number.
Doesn't have anything to do with the budget.
Chamber, members,
15.11.
members, can you remember that I'm chairing the meeting, not everybody in this hall, thank you. Carry on, Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not one BME organisation is on that stakeholder panel. Not ICOS, the International Communities of Sunderland, who've asked to be. Young Asian Voices, 40 Friends of the Drop-In, who support people, the refugees and asylum seekers in the city. Not the Gurdwara. Nobody. How on earth can you talk about inclusion and cohesion if you don't have the members of the community who are most impacted by the riots on the stakeholder panel? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Leader, would you like to exercise your right of reply?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'll start on the point that Councillor Duncan has just tried to willfully mislead council in the city. There are two members of the BME reps on the agenda on that day. We held a meeting of the Interfaith Forum last week where we sat around with the whole of the Interfaith Forum. They've been absolutely integral to the development of this strategy. They will be an integral part of the summit that we're having. So what you've just said there is completely and utterly true. I see that you've weaseled your way into the event on Friday. I'm more than happy to welcome you there. So I look forward to your contribution, so we look forward to that. Madam Mayor, the contributions we've heard from the opposition today are completely and utterly ridiculous. They are speaking in a political vacuum to themselves, for themselves. The fact is that this is the best settlement we've received as a council in 10 years. It's halved our 3-year deficit, and we've seen a 9.37% increase in core spending power. It's managed to effectively draw a line under where we were with constant cut after cut after cut from the opposition. It steadied the ship, and we look forward to the first year of the 3-year funding settlement, the redirection of funding away from leafy shire counties in the south back to the places like the North East who have suffered disproportionately under the previous government. Councillor Hodgson gets up and gives his impassioned speech. I applaud you for your passion of the creative arts, but the fact is you're an opposition councillor. You're asking for information. We run this city, and we'll disseminate the information to the city at the appropriate time. At the end of the day, that's it. At the end of the day. Absolutely. Do you think that... Absolutely, yes I do. Absolutely, yes I do. Absolutely.
Members,
Absolutely,
members,
yes,
the
I
leader
do.
has the right to
the
reply.
The people of the city elect the Labour Party to run this city, and we will run this city. You sit there and cry and moan and whinge, but at the end of the day, This Labour group is representing the wishes of the city. This is what the resident survey tells us, that each and every day we've seen a significant uptick in the satisfaction from residents from the most recent resident survey, and that's the reason they want to get rid of it, because they don't want to see the work that this Labour group is doing on behalf of the city, and it's about time you start being treated like an opposition, because you're not interested for the people of the city, you're interested for your own aims.
Point of order.
A lot of the comments, Madam Mayor, weren't specifically on the budget.
On what rule?
Actually on the Local Government Act of 2011. Madam Mayor, does that Act not protect councillors' rights to have information within councils? I think what Councillor Mordy was suggesting was that it should be hidden from us because we're in opposition.
That's not what I said. I said information would be given at the appropriate times. You're asking for information that's not ready for the public domain. It's not ready. It's not fair. So it will be issued at a time when it's appropriate and all the plans are fully formed and they're ready to be shared.
Madam Mayor.
But at the end of the day, Madam Mayor, we've had a number of different speeches, not particularly on the budget.
You didn't rule on the point of order.
The issue of the government. And yes, things have been tough for the people of the city for the last 14 years. But light is finally at the end of the tunnel. We've seen recently the Labour government very early in our administration, 7 months, have created 2 million additional NHS appointments, fixing the foundations of the NHS. 2 million extra NHS appointments and a plan for change for the NHS. By the end of this Parliament, the NHS will be completely transformed. We cannot expect immediate change in 7 months, and the government is bringing forward plans to revolutionise the way the NHS is operated. Madam Mayor, we can go on in terms of living standards. Increase in the minimum wage for over 3 million workers, worth up to £1,400 a year. Protected the triple lock on pensions, with the state pension increasing by 1,900 over the Parliament, and secured more than 63 billion of private investment, creating more than 38,000 jobs. This is me absolutely standing up and pointing out that the government was elected to fix the foundations of the economy, inherited 22 billion black hole in the public finances, and that we are going about it in a grown-up, measured way of sorting out the mess that your two parties inflicted on this country through 14 years of austerity. And you're just sitting there shouting and bawling and acting like kids because you understand that this Labour group, every single one of us, the Labour government, are absolutely putting plans in place that will transform the city by the end of the Parliament. In terms of Councillor Mullins' budget, this budget is the Labour group's budget. We came to the proposals together collectively as a group, but if I was to give you one specific new element in the budget this year, is the £1 million investment into antisocial behaviour and community cohesion. That is absolutely as a result of the things we've seen in August last year, and it's absolutely baffling to me that at a time when as a council we need to be talking more to our communities and listening to the communities and co-producing strategy, both of your parties wanted to reduce the ability of the council to do that. The people of Sunderland need information from the council that's not through, I didn't want to give you it, not them. So at the end of the day, this Labour group is putting in place policies and plans that will absolutely benefit the residents of the city, are absolutely at the behest and the request of what the residents tell us in the resident survey that we want. We will continue doing that for year and year after. And Madam Mayor, I would ask Council to support the recommendations from the Cabinet today on the budget and the revenue position and the capital programme for the year ahead. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, sorry. Under 14 point of explanation, we're going to talk about the budget and vote on it now, but we had some very serious riots in the city, and Councillor Donkin has referred to a very important point. Now, last night, Belong, who's been commissioned by the council to look into this, had a meeting at the Back on the Map building. 12 people turned up. Councillor Fagan represented her party, I represented mine. And I think that people from the opposition, elected members, are not weaseling their way into meetings. They are open here to be part of the system. I've reached out in the past. I'm not invited on Friday, but I just want to back up what Councillor Donkin said. For a very, very important issue like this, we should all be in the meetings and all together. Thank you.
I have to come back on this, Madam Mayor, because the Belong events were specifically designed not to have councillors there, because when councillors are in meetings, they try to drive the agenda, they try to put their political point about. These Belong meetings were held in all parts of the city and were specifically designed for residents to come and share their views, not for councillors to come along and to put their points of view. So this is why they were set up. This is why we were on. In terms of the BME reps, they're absolutely...
A point of order.
Can I just say there was no actual residents there last night. They were all from organisations like Gen 2 and from the Police Crime Commissioner's Office. So there was no actual residents there. They were all representatives of some kind of organisation.
Thank you. This is not about the vote. We will now move to the vote. Thank you, Leader. That brings us to the vote on the original motion before the Council, which must be a recorded vote.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So if the officers will open the vote, please.
Sorry?
Press the green button. Press your mic on.
Oh.
No, yes.
Just a joke.
And if the officers could close the vote now, please. There are 44 votes in favour and 17 against, and so the original motion is carried.
Thank you. That concludes the meeting. Thank you.
Reckon you'll see another budget, Michael?
A distance.